Before we begin, this broadcast is a fictional audio drama created for entertainment purposes. Good evening. I'm John Vale, and I'm here in the studio tonight with Mara Ellison. We were planning for a quieter international hour, the kind of late broadcast where the world feels large but manageable. Energy ministers in Brussels spent the day arguing over winter reserve levels. Switzerland issued travel advisories for heavy snow across several alpine passes. A rail strike in northern Italy is still expected to affect morning commuters. And at CERN, outside Geneva, researchers completed what was described earlier today as a scheduled high-energy collision sequence inside the Large Hadron Collider. That last item was supposed to be a science note, not a breaking news headline. CERN runs experiments all the time, and most of them pass through the public imagination as a few paragraphs in a science section, a photograph of a tunnel, maybe a quote from a physicist about particles most people will never picture correctly. Tonight's experiment was not publicized as dangerous. It was not described as unprecedented in the way people online like to imagine. It was technical, controlled, and according to the facility's own morning release, part of a routine data run connected to high-energy field behavior under extreme collision conditions. About 90 minutes ago, the first reports came in of a power fluctuation at the CERN complex. At first, that did not mean much. A facility that large can experience electrical issues, cooling interruptions, sensor faults, temporary shutdowns. The early statement from CERN said teams were responding to an equipment anomaly in an underground service area and that there was no public danger. Swiss emergency services were seen entering parts of the Meyrin site. French authorities confirmed they were coordinating because portions of the facility cross or sit near the French-Swiss border. Again, all of that sounded serious but contained. Industrial sites have emergency protocols. Scientific facilities plan for failures most of us never hear about because the system works and the public never needs to know. Then the local calls started.
The first calls were not about radiation, John. That is important, because whenever CERN trends during an emergency, the public imagination goes straight to radiation. Black holes, antimatter, all the usual fears that have followed that facility for years. But the calls from the surrounding towns were different. People in Meyrin, Saint-Genis-Pouilly, Ferney-Voltaire, and several smaller communities near the border reported a tremor, a deep one, not a sharp earthquake. One caller told a local station that it felt like something heavy rolling under the foundation of the house. Another said her kitchen tiles warmed for a few seconds and then cooled again. A man near a service road reported hearing what he thought was a train underground, even though no rail line runs beneath his property. The first visual reports were even stranger, but still explainable if you tried hard enough. Residents saw a red-orange glow near several access structures connected to the CERN site. Some described it as emergency lighting reflecting off low clouds. Others said it seemed to be coming from vents, drainage channels, or the edges of utility covers. There are already videos online, and most of them are not useful. They are dark, shaky, zoomed too far, full of people breathing into microphones. But a few show something consistent, a low light rising from places where light should not rise. CERN's second statement called it a localized electrical failure with associated thermal effects. That phrase is doing a lot of work. Associated thermal effects could mean overheating equipment. It could mean a fire in a cable gallery. It could mean emergency systems venting heat. It could also mean officials did not yet know how to describe why people outside the main facility were reporting warmth under floors and red light from underground infrastructure. The official guidance at that point was simple. Stay clear of CERN access roads, allow emergency vehicles through, do not approach service entrances or restricted technical areas. There was no evacuation order, there was no mention of hostile activity, there was no suggestion of anything beyond a contained scientific or industrial incident.
And to be clear, contained was the word that mattered in those first statements. CERN said the event was contained to a service sector. Swiss authorities said the response was localized. French authorities said cross-border coordination was precautionary. It sounded like an underground fire or equipment failure that might inconvenience the region but would not redefine the night. That changed about 40 minutes later when the first firefighters came out. We are relying here on official summaries, local reporting, and several accounts from emergency personnel speaking through intermediaries, so we are not going to overstate what we know. But multiple sources now confirm that at least one team entered a lower service area near the affected sector and returned without completing the search. They were treated for burns or burn-like injuries. That is the phrase one medical source used. burn like to. Their protective equipment was damaged, but not in the pattern expected from ordinary flame exposure. One responder's gloves were described as brittle at the fingertips, as if the material had aged or dried out suddenly. Another had blistering along the neck where the suit seal should have protected him. The first assumption was chemical exposure, then superheated gas, then an electrical arc event. Those are sensible assumptions. Emergency medicine begins with the known world. If someone comes out burned, you look for heat, chemicals, electricity, radiation. You do not look for hell. Not at first.
The word hell began with people outside the official response. It started in text messages, then local streams, then short video clips, because ordinary people reach for the nearest word faster than institutions do. A woman standing near a blocked road said on camera, "It looks like hell under there." A firefighter's relative posted that something was screaming below the facility. Another person claimed emergency crews were told not to repeat voices they heard inside the tunnel. At that point, most of those claims sounded like panic being shaped into a story. But then the emergency audio began circulating. We should be careful with that audio. Some of it may be fake, some may be mistranslated, some may be from different incidents, and some may be real but stripped of context. We are not airing it directly. But several reputable European outlets say they have authenticated at least one recording from early response traffic. In that recording, a responder inside the complex reports hearing voices from below the service level. The dispatcher asks whether there are trapped workers beneath him. The responder says there is no level beneath him on the map. Then he says, "They are under the concrete." That sentence has now been repeated across Europe in several languages, and it is doing more damage to public calm than any image we have seen.
CERN has not commented on that recording. Swiss emergency services have not confirmed it, but they have not called it fabricated either. The facility's latest official update says teams are responding to a severe underground containment failure and that all non-essential personnel have been evacuated from the primary ring access areas. That is a substantial escalation. Containment failure is no longer a routine power fluctuation. Underground containment failure suggests something inside the facility is no longer staying where it was expected to stay. We are now just over 2 hours since the first equipment anomaly was reported. In that time, the language has moved from power fluctuation to equipment anomaly to localized thermal event to underground containment failure. It has not moved to explosion. It has not moved to radiation leak. It has not moved to terrorism. It has not moved to natural disaster. The words are circling something else.
And the public is ahead of the words. That is part of the tension tonight. People near the facility are not waiting for terminology. They are hearing things. They are seeing things. They are describing the world as it appears to them, while officials try to keep the event inside a scientific frame. We have several confirmed evacuations now from buildings on or near CERN property. Personnel have been moved out of above-ground offices. Some roads around the Mayron site are closed. Police on both sides of the border are establishing a wider perimeter. Hospitals in Geneva have been placed on alert for exposure cases, though again, we do not know exposure to what. There are reports of emergency crews washing down equipment outside a tunnel entrance, but no official explanation has been given for the decontamination procedure. The strangest verified detail, at least to me, is the clocks. Several facilities near the complex reported timekeeping errors after the incident. Some digital clocks reset. Some security logs show duplicated minutes. A tram stop display near Mayron reportedly jumped forward, then back, then froze. That might be connected to power fluctuation, network failure, or nothing at all. But when paired with the other reports, even ordinary system errors begin to feel like they belong to the event. And that is how fear changes. It starts attaching itself to things that would have been ignored on any other night.
CERN has now requested that the public avoid speculation. That request will not succeed. I do not say that dismissively. It simply will not. Once people hear a responder say there are voices under concrete, once they see red light rising from drains, once they learn firefighters came out burned in a way doctors are struggling to categorize, speculation becomes the public's attempt to survive uncertainty. We are going to avoid speculation where we can. We are also not going to pretend this is still only a technical incident if the confirmed facts continue moving away from that explanation. Let me bring listeners through the geography, because it matters. CERN is not a single building with a machine in the basement. The Large Hadron Collider is a massive circular tunnel beneath the French-Swiss border, roughly 27 kilometers around. There are access points, service areas, control buildings, shafts, experimental halls, and technical infrastructure spread across a wide area. If something goes wrong underground, the response is not as simple as closing one door. The facility is already a map beneath the map, and tonight the reports are not coming from one doorway. They are coming from multiple access points. That does not necessarily mean the breach or fire or containment failure is everywhere. Heat travels through tunnels, smoke travels, electrical failures cascade. Emergency lights reflect. Sound carries strangely underground, but the pattern is broad enough that authorities have now extended road closures around more than one sector of the site. French and Swiss police are coordinating as though the facility itself has become a shared emergency zone rather than a single accident scene.
We have an update from Geneva University hospitals. They are receiving patients from the CERN response, but the statement does not give a number. It says the hospital network has activated specialized burn and exposure protocols and is coordinating with civil protection authorities. There is no public radiation emergency. That line is repeated. No public radiation emergency. The fact that they repeat it so often tells you what they think people will fear first. But several patients are being treated for what one medical source described as heat injuries without ordinary smoke inhalation. That is unusual. In a tunnel fire, smoke is often one of the greatest dangers. The early patients, according to this source, were conscious, frightened, and difficult to calm. One allegedly kept saying that the people still inside were not the people who went in. We do not know what that means. It could be shock, it could be trauma, it could be misheard. It could be exactly the kind of sentence people say when they have seen something their brain is trying to reject. There are also reports that responders are being told not to enter certain service areas even if they hear voices calling from inside. That instruction, if accurate, is extraordinary. In a normal rescue, voices mean survivors. Tonight, voices may mean something else, or authorities fear the voices may be misleading teams into unsafe sections. That is the first operational detail that sounds less like an accident and more like a hostile environment.
We have not heard official confirmation of that instruction, but several sources near the response have described something similar. Do not follow voices. Do not respond to calls from unverified locations. Maintain line-of-sight contact with your team. Do not separate in smoke. Those instructions could apply to any complex underground fire. Visibility is poor. Sound is distorted. A trapped worker may appear to be one corridor away when they are actually behind a sealed wall. But tonight, the phrase, "do not follow voices," has taken on a terrible clarity. We are now approaching 3 hours since the first reports from the CERN service tunnels, and the situation is no longer being treated as a facility accident. Swiss federal authorities are involved. French interior officials are involved. The European Commission has acknowledged it is monitoring the incident. NATO has not issued a formal statement, but several defense analysts are noting unusual aircraft movement in the region, and we are seeing reports of military units placed on readiness in France and Switzerland. CERN's live public status page has gone offline. The replacement page says only that the facility is under emergency operations and that updates will be provided through government channels. That is another shift. CERN is no longer the main public voice for its own emergency.
John, we have new video from a town near the French side of the facility. We are not showing it here, obviously, but I can describe it. It is filmed from inside a car stopped near a police roadblock. The camera points toward what looks like an industrial access road. There are emergency vehicles ahead. Red lights, blue lights, reflective jackets. Then, for about 4 seconds, the ground beyond the roadblock glows from below. Not a flame rising upward. It looks more like the pavement is translucent, and something underneath it brightens. People in the car stop talking. Then there is a sound. It is very low. The phone microphone distorts, so I cannot say what it sounded like in person, but on video it is almost like a horn or a deep animal call, except too large for any animal. The person filming whispers something in French. The translation we have is, "That is not a machine." A police officer near the roadblock turns around at the sound and begins waving cars backward. Not calmly, not casually. He runs toward the line of cars and waves both arms, pushing them away from the checkpoint. That reaction may be the most important part of the clip. The light is strange, the sound is strange, but the trained officer's reaction is what makes the video hard to dismiss.
We should remind listeners that viral video can distort scale, sound, and context, but if this video is authentic, it suggests the phenomenon is not confined to the central tunnel area. It is affecting ground-level infrastructure near at least one access road. There are now local reports of church bells ringing in at least 2 communities near the emergency zone. I want to be careful with that because church bells can ring for many reasons, including scheduled services, malfunction, or human response to crisis. But multiple residents say the bells began at an irregular pace after the tremor and that no one was inside one of the churches at the time. Again, that may be rumor. It may also be one of those details that becomes more symbolic than evidentiary. The danger in this broadcast is obvious. The mind wants to turn every red light into flame, every underground sound into a beast, every bell into prophecy. We are going to resist that. But we also have to recognize that the event itself is now moving into symbols faster than officials can strip them away. Hell is a word people use when the categories fail. Tonight, the categories are failing.
There is another reason people are using that word, John. It is not just the fire or the red light. It is the reports of recognition. That is what keeps appearing in witness accounts, and it is what makes the story feel different from a disaster. People are not only hearing screams, they are hearing names. A CERN employee who evacuated from an above-ground support building told a local reporter that several workers heard voices over an internal intercom after the main systems went down. The voices were not announcements, they were calling individual people by name. One worker said she heard her brother, who died years ago, asking her to open a service door. Another said the voice sounded like his mother but spoke in a language she never knew. These claims are not officially confirmed, and they are exactly the kind of stories that can emerge from fear, grief, and rumor. But the pattern is appearing too often to ignore completely. Emergency guidance from regional authorities now includes language telling residents not to enter basements, underground garages, utility rooms, storm drains, or service tunnels in the affected area, even if they hear calls for help. That instruction is real. It is on the current alert page. Officials frame it as a safety measure because underground spaces may be unstable or contaminated. But the phrase, even if they hear calls for help, has changed the entire emotional meaning of the alert. People are being told that the sound of a person in danger may not be a person.
That is the moment this became something else. A public safety system is built around response to distress. Someone calls, someone answers. Someone screams, someone moves toward the scream. Tonight, authorities are telling people not to trust the oldest rescue instinct humans have. Do not go down. Do not answer from below. That guidance is spreading now across local emergency channels. It is being translated, reposted, argued over, mocked by people far from the scene, and obeyed by people close enough to hear sounds under their floors. We have an official statement now from the Swiss Federal Council. I will summarize rather than read the formal text. The government says there has been a severe incident at the CERN facility involving underground infrastructure instability, extreme thermal conditions, and unidentified hostile biological hazards. That phrase is new. Unidentified hostile biological hazards. The statement says public movement around the affected zone is restricted, emergency services are engaged, and residents should remain above ground and away from underground access points unless instructed otherwise. Unidentified hostile biological hazards is the closest official language has come to admitting that something living or acting living is involved.
And now the word hostile is official. That changes everything. Earlier we had anomaly, containment failure, exposure, thermal effects. Hostile means responders encountered resistance, threat, or behavior that cannot be treated as passive. Biological means they are not describing only fire, gas, heat, radiation, or a machine. Hazards is plural or at least broad. It may be cautious language, but it opens a door officials avoided for the first 3 hours. We are also hearing that a rescue team is missing inside one of the lower access areas. Authorities are not confirming the number. A firefighter union source in the region says contact was lost after the team reported movement in a corridor that should have been sealed. Their last clear message was not a distress call, it was a question. They asked command whether another team had been sent in ahead of them because they could see people standing at the far end of the tunnel. Command reportedly told them no other team was there. Then the radio filled with voices.
We cannot confirm the full details of that account, but we can confirm that emergency officials have acknowledged loss of contact with personnel inside the restricted underground area. They are not calling it a fatality event. They are not giving names. They are saying conditions are too unstable for immediate recovery. We are now 3.5 hours into the emergency. The first hour belonged to CERN, the second belonged to police and firefighters. This third hour belongs to governments trying to find language for an event that is no longer staying inside science. The Vatican has issued a brief statement saying it is praying for the people of Geneva and for all responders, and that it is in communication with local church authorities. That statement would be unremarkable in many disasters. Tonight it will be read differently. Religious leaders near Geneva are already speaking more directly than government officials. One priest in the area, interviewed by a local outlet, said people are coming to churches not because they believe the buildings are magic, but because they need a word larger than accident. A word larger than accident. That is where we are.
John, there is a confirmed evacuation now from parts of Marin nearest the facility. It is not a full city evacuation, but buses are being used to move residents away from several zones. Authorities are telling people to bring essential medication, identification, warm clothing, and to avoid underground parking areas when leaving. That last instruction has made evacuation difficult because many people's cars are in underground garages. Police are telling them not to retrieve vehicles if doing so requires going below street level. Imagine being told to leave your home, but not to go downstairs for your car because something might call to you from the lower level. That is the kind of instruction that sounds impossible until you are the person standing in the hallway with a coat, a phone, and a child asking why the garage door is making noise. Local transit has stopped service through several underground or partially underground segments. Trams and buses above ground are being rerouted. Train services toward Geneva are disrupted. Airports are monitoring the situation but remain open for now. The Swiss military has been placed in support of civil authorities, and French forces are securing border-side access points. The response is expanding, but not like a normal plume, not like smoke or radiation moving with wind. It is expanding along the underground map.
That is a crucial distinction. The hazard is following depth, access, and connection, tunnels, shafts, service corridors, underground utilities. If the reports are accurate, the event is using the built environment beneath Europe as its path outward. CERN may have opened the breach, but infrastructure may be teaching it where to go. We have new footage from inside the CERN complex. We are not airing it, and we are not certain how it was obtained. It appears to be from a fixed security camera in a service corridor. The image is grainy, red-lit, partially obscured by smoke or steam. For several seconds there is nothing but emergency lights and a wall of haze. Then shapes appear at the far end of the corridor. At first they look like people moving slowly through smoke. Then one of them moves sideways along the wall without changing posture, as if gravity is not applying to it in the direction the camera expects. A second shape lowers from the ceiling. The feed cuts out before anything reaches the camera. We cannot verify authenticity yet, but multiple outlets are analyzing the same clip, and its release has coincided with a sudden tightening of official language around hostile biological hazards.
That clip is going to change public reaction faster than any statement. People can argue about red light and tremors, they can argue about audio, they can tell themselves voices are panic, that burns are chemical, that bells are coincidence. But if that footage is real, it shows movement that the public will not accept as human, animal, or machine. And we should say something about the word demon now, because it is everywhere. Officials are not using it, scientists are not using it, emergency management is not using it, but witnesses are. People near the site are. Online, obviously, but also serious local reporters when they think they are off camera, and responders' relatives in private messages. The word demon is not being used because people have a theological model ready. It is being used because the things being described match the word people already have for hostile beings from hell. And yes, hell is now the public word for this. Not breach, not anomaly, not facility incident, hell.
There is a discipline to not using the word too soon, and there is a cowardice in refusing to use it when every other word has collapsed. We are not there yet officially, but we are closer than we were an hour ago. Authorities are now expanding restrictions across several underground access points beyond CERN property. Basements in immediate evacuation zones are to remain closed. Utility workers have been ordered out of certain service tunnels. Police are responding to reports of sounds from drains and maintenance covers, but residents are being told not to investigate. This is spreading through underground spaces, or at least the fear of it is. We are approaching 4 hours since the first anomaly at CERN. It has been less than 2 hours since the first public mention of voices. It has been under an hour since the Swiss government used the phrase unidentified hostile biological hazards. That acceleration is astonishing. Institutional language usually resists the impossible. Tonight it is being dragged there.
There is another confirmed detail from the evacuation zone. Several residents reported seeing people walking near restricted service entrances who did not respond to police commands. At first, officers thought they were disoriented workers or residents who had entered the closed area. Then one of them moved into the light. A local official has not released video, but a police source described the figure as severely burned, unclothed or covered in blackened material, and moving with what they called non-viable injuries. That phrase is medical and disturbing. Non-viable injuries means injuries inconsistent with normal survival. The figure reportedly continued walking after officers ordered it to stop. It then dropped or crawled back toward the service entrance when floodlights hit it. That is the first credible above-ground description of something that may be one of these entities. Officials are not calling it a demon, they are calling it a hostile biological form, but the people who saw it are calling it a demon.
We are going to be careful. A severely injured person can look monstrous. Burn victims can move in ways that frighten witnesses. Smoke, light, fear, and distance can distort the human body. But the phrase non-viable injuries is not casual. It suggests responders saw something that did not fit their expectations of a living person. We are now receiving a rapid update from Swiss authorities. The evacuation zone around CERN is expanding. French authorities are doing the same on their side. Residents closest to restricted access points are being moved immediately. All underground public access in the wider area is suspended. That includes underground parking, service tunnels, certain rail links, and public shelters. The instruction is no longer only about staying away from CERN, it is about staying away from below.
There is a new alert in the region. It says residents should not open doors, hatches, cellar entrances, maintenance covers, or underground access points in response to knocking, voices, crying, or calls for help unless directed by emergency personnel. That is now written in an official emergency alert. Knocking, voices, crying, or calls for help. That sentence may be remembered for a very long time.
Yes. That sentence is where the world changed tonight. Emergency systems are now warning civilians that the sounds of distress may be a threat, not because of a criminal hiding in a basement, not because of smoke making people hallucinate, because something has come through an underground breach at CERN, and whatever it is understands human response well enough to imitate need. We are just under 4 hours into this emergency. CERN's public page is offline. The surrounding region is under expanding evacuation. Underground access is being sealed. Hospitals are treating responders for extreme and unusual injuries. Governments have acknowledged hostile biological hazards. Multiple sources describe figures moving through smoke inside the tunnels. Residents are reporting voices from below. The first above-ground hostile form may have been seen near a service entrance and inside the main ring. According to two sources familiar with the response, emergency teams believe the entities have control of several lower access sectors. That phrase has not been used publicly yet, control, but it is the word sources are using now.
If that is accurate, then the problem is no longer that CERN suffered a breach. The problem is that the breach has a defended side. It is not only open, something is holding it open. That changes the entire response. Firefighters cannot solve that. Police cannot solve that. Scientists cannot solve that alone. Even containment may not solve it if the source of the event is now occupied by the things coming through it. The question becomes whether humanity can take the facility back.
And that is where we are heading. We are going to continue following verified updates from Swiss and French authorities, CERN personnel, hospitals, evacuation zones, and European security officials. You are listening to Fictional Radio. I'm John Vale, here in studio with Mara Ellison. It has been nearly 4 hours since a scheduled CERN experiment became an underground emergency. The official language has moved from power fluctuation to hostile biological hazard. Residents are being told not to answer voices from below. Evacuations are expanding across the French-Swiss border, and according to sources close to the response, parts of CERN's underground ring may now be under the control of whatever came through. For the first time tonight, the question is no longer only what opened beneath Geneva, it is whether anyone can close it. We are continuing our coverage of the emergency unfolding beneath the French-Swiss border, where authorities now believe portions of CERN's underground ring are no longer under human control. That sentence would have sounded absurd at the beginning of this broadcast. 4 hours ago, we were talking about a power fluctuation, a tunnel fire, a contained equipment anomaly. Now, Swiss and French authorities are expanding evacuations. Hospitals are treating responders for injuries that do not match ordinary heat exposure, and emergency alerts are warning residents not to answer voices from below ground. It has been nearly 4 hours since the first equipment anomaly was reported at CERN. It has been just over 2 hours since the first emergency crews entered the lower service levels and returned burned, disoriented, and unable to explain what they heard. It has been less than an hour since the Swiss government used the phrase hostile biological hazards, and in that hour the language of the response has changed faster than the public can absorb it. The word demon is still not official, the word hell is still not official, but they are no longer only online words. They are being used by responders' families, by evacuees, by clergy, by local reporters, and, according to one source, by a police commander who told his officers over a closed channel, if it comes out of the ground and it does not answer, treat it as hostile. That source has not been publicly identified, and we cannot confirm the exact wording, but the instruction matches the posture we are seeing now around the facility.
The response map has changed again. Earlier tonight, the affected area looked like a perimeter around CERN. Now it looks like authorities are mapping the underground world. Roads are still closed, yes, but the focus has shifted to entrances, shafts, tunnels, basements, technical corridors, old rail connections, maintenance systems, and anything that creates access below the surface. In Geneva, officials are asking residents in certain neighborhoods to avoid underground garages and basement storage rooms. In nearby French towns, police have closed several drainage passages and service access points. Transit authorities are shutting down portions of rail infrastructure that were never physically connected to CERN in a simple public way, but may share underground utility corridors, inspection tunnels, or older maintenance routes. That is why the fear is changing. People are not only afraid of CERN anymore, they are afraid of the floor below them. They are looking at cellar doors, utility grates, elevator shafts, stairwells, subway entrances, parking ramps. The whole built world has suddenly revealed a lower half. We have confirmed reports now from several evacuation shelters where people are arriving without cars because their vehicles were parked underground and police told them not to retrieve them. A family from Mayron told local reporters they left with passports, medication, and a sleeping child wrapped in a blanket while their car sat one floor beneath their apartment building. The father said the garage door was opening and closing by itself when they left. It may have been a power issue. It may have been an emergency override. It may have been 100 ordinary mechanical failures happening during a crisis. But the family did not wait to find out.
That is the rational response tonight. Leave the explanation behind if waiting for it requires going downstairs. Authorities have issued new guidance across the immediate zone. I'm going to summarize it in plain language. People near the affected area are being told to stay above ground, avoid enclosed lower levels, move toward lit public evacuation routes if instructed to leave, and ignore calls, knocking, crying, or familiar voices coming from underground spaces. Officials are still framing this as a safety measure, citing smoke, structural instability, acoustic distortion, and possible hostile entities within restricted infrastructure, but the guidance itself is unmistakable. It assumes that people may hear something that sounds human and that responding to it could place them in danger. This is not how governments speak during a fire. This is not how governments speak during an earthquake. This is how governments speak when the thing beneath the ground has learned how to call upward. We are now receiving reports from outside the original CERN region. I want to move slowly here because this is where panic can outrun the facts. A metro station in Lyon was evacuated after commuters reported red light in a maintenance tunnel and the sound of voices from a closed service passage. Local officials initially described it as an electrical fault. That explanation may still be correct, but the station remains closed, and French National Police are on scene. In Milan, a subway operator reported an unauthorized figure on tracks near a closed tunnel segment. Power was cut, trains were stopped, and responders withdrew after hearing what one source called multiple voices from beyond the access gate. Italian authorities have not connected that event to CERN, but they have suspended service through that segment while inspections continue. These may be copycat fears, they may be ordinary incidents transformed by the night's larger terror, but the closures are real.
And Paris is now responding too, not to an attack, not to a confirmed entity, but to reports from the catacomb-adjacent inspection systems and several older underground utility passages. The city has an enormous unseen architecture beneath it. Tunnels, bones, quarries, sewers, service corridors, sealed spaces that most residents never think about unless there is a flood or a documentary. Tonight, police are asking people not to enter unauthorized underground areas under any circumstances. That is always illegal in many places, but the tone is different now. It is not only about trespassing, it is about something below being active. There is a detail from Paris that I almost hesitate to say because it sounds like folklore, but it comes from two separate local reports. People near one sealed entrance heard bells underground, not church bells above them, bells below. Soft, repeated, uneven. Officials have not confirmed it. It could be pipes, metal strain, transit noise, or people deliberately making noise in the tunnels. But after the church bells near Geneva, after the voices, after the security footage from CERN, the public is not going to treat underground bells as infrastructure noise. This is the larger problem for authorities now. Every old fear Europe has buried under stone is waking up in people's minds. Catacombs, crypts, plague pits, bunkers, mines, war tunnels. The places people built to hide from death, store death, escape death, or bury death are all suddenly part of the same map.
We should say that carefully. The emergency may still be physically limited. The fear is not. And fear travels through history faster than any entity travels through a tunnel. We are now 4.5 hours into the emergency. The first evacuation orders have become broader underground restrictions. CERN's public communications remain offline. Swiss and French authorities are still avoiding theological language, but the Vatican's tone has changed. A second statement from the Holy See says the Church is in contact with dioceses across Europe and urges people not to seek contact with voices, apparitions, or figures claiming to be deceased loved ones. That is not standard disaster language from the Vatican. It is pastoral, but it is also operational in its own way. Mara, you were looking at that statement a moment ago.
Yes. What stands out is how direct it is without being sensational. It does not say demons are loose in Europe. It does not declare the end times. It does not tell people to panic or gather in churches. It tells people not to respond to manifestations of the dead, not to enter underground spaces for spiritual reasons, and not to attempt private exorcisms or rituals near affected zones. That last part suggests church officials are already worried people will go toward the danger believing they can confront it, pray over it, document it, or prove something. There are reports of people gathering outside churches in Geneva, Lyon, and Milan. Some are praying. Some are trying to get priests to bless homes before evacuation. Others are angry, saying governments and scientists open something they cannot close. The religious reaction is becoming part of the emergency response now, whether officials want that or not. If people believe hell has opened, they will not be reassured by a ministry saying hostile biological anomaly. They will ask for priests, imams, rabbis, pastors, anyone with language older than the state, and the state is beginning to borrow that language indirectly. One emergency official in France, speaking on television a few minutes ago, said the situation involves entities emerging from the breach environment. Entities, emerging, breach. Those are not scientific words in the usual public sense. They are bridge words. They let officials say almost demon without saying demon.
The almost words are everywhere now. We are also seeing the first reports of direct attacks outside the CERN facility. Swiss authorities confirmed that 2 security personnel were injured near an outer service structure after what officials call contact with a hostile form. They have not described the form. Local media say one officer fired his weapon and another used a vehicle-mounted light system that caused the figure to retreat into the access structure. The wounded personnel are alive. Their injuries are described as severe lacerations and burns. Gunfire near the facility has been reported by several residents before they were evacuated. That is significant because until now the response had been framed as rescue, evacuation, and containment. Gunfire means responders are no longer only protecting people from conditions, they are defending against things.
There is a witness account from a road outside the evacuation zone that lines up with that. A man filming from an apartment window captures emergency vehicles near a service road. It is night, visibility is poor, and much of the frame is blocked by trees. But you can hear shouting, then several sharp cracks, likely gunfire, then a much deeper sound from somewhere below the road. The person filming drops the phone or pulls it down, so the camera points at the floor, but the audio continues. Someone outside screams in French. Another voice, very close to the microphone, says it came on all fours. Again, we do not know what it means. We do not know what was seen. But we now have official confirmation of injured security personnel after contact with a hostile form, and we have civilian audio from roughly the same area. The pieces are beginning to align. What worries me is that the entities seem to be learning the routes out. At first, the reports were inside the ring and lower service areas, then near access points, now road-level service structures. If they are coming through the collider as a main gate, then every maintenance path connected to that system becomes a possible exit.
And that brings us to the question of control inside CERN. Several sources close to the response now say the lower ring cannot be accessed safely through normal routes. Doors that should open remotely are not responding. Cameras in multiple sectors are either offline or showing images that do not match their known positions. One technical source says a camera inside a lower service corridor showed a staircase descending where there should be a flat passage. Another showed a tunnel continuing beyond a sealed wall. That may indicate camera damage, mislabeling, data corruption, or failure of internal mapping systems. But the description being used by people inside the response is worse. They are saying the geometry is wrong. That phrase has appeared in 3 separate messages we have received from people following the technical side of this emergency. The geometry is wrong, not simply damaged, not collapsed, wrong. If responders cannot trust the map, then the facility is not only occupied, it is changing.
That may explain why rescue teams are being held back despite missing personnel. Normally, when responders are trapped, everything bends toward rescue. Tonight, the command decision appears to be shifting toward sealing sectors rather than entering them. That is an awful decision, and it may be necessary. If teams go in and cannot trust distance, direction, voices, or the appearance of human figures, they can be drawn deeper and lost one team at a time. There is one report, still unconfirmed, that a trapped CERN employee reached a control room phone and told supervisors not to open the lower doors because the voices outside were using employee ID numbers. That detail, employee ID numbers, is horrifying because it suggests the entities are not just imitating grief or loved ones, they are absorbing the environment. Names, voices, systems, procedures, they are learning the language of access. A demon that can sound like your mother is terrifying. A demon that can ask for clearance is operationally terrifying.
That is the distinction military and emergency planners are now facing. This is not only a supernatural event, it is a breach into a highly technical facility, and whatever has entered is interacting with that facility. CERN was built to control energy, vacuum, magnets, cryogenic systems, sensors, data, access, and underground movement. If the entities now occupy the ring, they may not understand the machinery in a human way, but they do not need to. They only need to use the facility as a wound that remains open. We are seeing language from European security officials now that suggests the main strategic objective is changing. Earlier statements focused on evacuation and containment. Newer statements refer to denial of access, suppression of emergent hostile forms, and preservation of options for structural closure. Structural closure is a phrase to watch. It means they are considering physically closing or destroying portions of the facility. That would have been unthinkable this morning. CERN is one of the most important scientific instruments ever built. Tonight, it may be treated as a gate that has to be broken.
John, there is breaking information from the French side. Authorities are evacuating an additional ring of communities near known CERN access and ventilation infrastructure. The notice says this is being done because of continued hostile emergence from lower technical spaces. That is the strongest official language yet. Continued hostile emergence. Not possible, not reported. Continued. They are admitting the emergence is ongoing. There are also reports that French military units are now taking positions at several outer access roads. Switzerland is also deploying military support, though under its own civil authority. The border is not closed, but movement near the affected zone is being tightly controlled. Residents are being moved away from underground adjacent structures first. That priority tells you what they fear.
Continued hostile emergence means the breach is not a single event, it is an active condition. We are approaching 5 hours since the first anomaly. In that time, the response has moved from technical repair to evacuation to armed containment. The next phase may be military action inside or against the facility itself. The European Commission has announced an emergency coordination session. NATO is still not publicly leading, but defense ministers from several countries are reportedly in secure talks. The Swiss government, because CERN sits on its territory and across a sensitive border region, remains central to the public response. France is central operationally, but this is no longer only a Swiss-French emergency. If underground systems in Lyon, Milan, and Paris are being treated as potential secondary sites, then every European capital is looking down tonight. The phrase people are using online is that hell has infrastructure now. It is crude, but it captures the fear. The breach did not open in a field. It opened inside a ring of tunnels, machines, shafts, cables, cooling systems, access points, data links, and maintenance roads. Humanity gave it a network.
And the entities seem to be using more than physical paths. There are reports of radio interference now across several emergency bands near the facility. Some of that is expected during a major response. Communications get crowded, equipment fails, signals bounce underground. But responders are reporting voices on channels that should be encrypted or closed, not random static. Voices calling unit numbers, names, sometimes repeating commands from earlier transmissions. One message from a responder's family member says his unit was told to ignore any instruction unless it came with a rotating authentication phrase. Minutes later, a voice on the channel repeated an old authentication phrase from the previous hour. That may be rumor, but it fits the broader concern that the entities can mimic, repeat, and lure. Officials are now telling emergency personnel to use visual confirmation and physical signals whenever possible near the inner perimeter. Think about that. In one of the most technologically advanced regions in the world, around one of the most advanced scientific facilities ever built, responders are being pushed back towards sight, touch, hand signals, and staying close enough to know the person beside you is still the person beside you.
The modern world is being stripped down by something ancient, or something that knows how to look ancient. We should also note that scientific voices are not absent tonight. Physicists outside CERN are urging caution, saying no known particle experiment can open a theological hell. That remains true within known science. They are also saying the public should wait for evidence before making supernatural claims. That is reasonable. But many of those same scientists are now adding that they do not have enough verified data to explain what is happening. The honest ones are saying, in effect, this should not be possible, but something has happened and the facts are not staying inside the existing model. That honesty matters. Denial without explanation is failing tonight. Caution with humility is holding better.
We have a statement from a former CERN engineer who worked on access systems years ago. He told a European broadcaster that the worst-case physical scenario for the LHC would normally involve damage, power loss, cryogenic failure, radiation concerns in limited contexts, or structural hazards. He said there is no ordinary failure mode in which voices come from below mapped levels, cameras show impossible passages, and armed responders report hostile forms moving through service corridors. His exact phrase was, "This is not a machine doing something wrong, this is something using a machine as an address." That line is spreading quickly, something using a machine as an address.
That may be the clearest technical metaphor we have. CERN did not simply explode. CERN may have become locatable from somewhere else. We are now 5 hours into this emergency. The latest official summary says the main breach environment remains within the CERN underground complex, but associated hostile activity has been reported along connected or analogous underground spaces in several European cities. That word analogous is strange. It suggests officials may not know whether the activity is physically spreading through tunnels or appearing in spaces that resemble the original breach conditions. In other words, hell may not need a continuous tunnel if it has learned the concept of below. That is speculative, but it fits the reports. Lyon, Milan, Paris, not necessarily connected in a simple physical way. But all have deep underground systems, old infrastructure, enclosed lower passages, and human density above them. If the phenomenon spreads by similarity rather than by distance, containment becomes much harder.
That is what makes this feel different from a normal invasion. An army moves across territory. A fire spreads through fuel. A gas follows pressure and wind. This seems to be appearing where the world has already made openings downward. The built environment becomes invitation. A basement is a small invitation. A tunnel is a larger one. A collider ring beneath the border may have been the largest invitation humans ever built without knowing it. Officials are not saying that, but their behavior suggests they fear it. Major cities across Europe are now inspecting underground transport systems. Some metro services are being suspended overnight as a precaution. Mines are reporting to national authorities. Power utilities are reviewing underground access. Even places with no connection to CERN are looking at their lower levels differently. It is hard to describe how fast a civilization can become afraid of its own foundations.
We are receiving new information from inside the CERN response. A sealed control room with surviving personnel may still be active in an upper underground level. Communications are intermittent. The personnel inside reportedly have access to partial internal sensor data and may be helping authorities identify which systems are still functioning. They are not in the main ring, they are isolated, and rescue is not currently possible. According to one source, those personnel reported that the main ring temperature readings no longer make sense. Some sensors show extreme heat. Others show cold below operational minimums. Some show pressure changes impossible for the sealed system. Several sensors report movement in evacuated sectors, but the tracking software cannot assign human profiles to the motion. That may be because the figures are not human-shaped enough, because the cameras are damaged, or because the system is interpreting smoke and heat artifacts as motion. But the control room reportedly sent one message that has alarmed the response teams. It said the ring is occupied.
The ring is occupied. That is the point where the story becomes military. You do not evacuate an occupied breach. You either seal it, surrender it, or retake it. And sealing it may not be simple if the things inside are preventing closure. CERN systems were never designed for hostile control by entities moving through impossible geometry. If doors are failing, cameras are unreliable, and access routes are changing, then destroying the facility may require people to go back inside. That is where this is headed. You can feel the response moving toward it. The question is who goes down, and whether the world is ready to ask them to.
Swiss and French authorities are expected to hold a joint briefing soon. We do not yet know whether military officials will speak. The briefing has been delayed twice. That delay may be technical, it may be political, it may also be that officials are deciding how much of the truth must be spoken aloud before asking the public to accept what comes next. Because the next step may be unthinkable. CERN may have to be destroyed, not closed, not repaired, not secured for later study, destroyed as an access point. We are going to continue with this coverage. You are listening to Fictional Radio. I'm John Vale, joined in studio by Mara Ellison. It has been 5 hours since the first incident at CERN. The breach has spread beyond a technical failure and into an armed containment emergency. Residents across affected areas are being told to stay above ground and ignore voices from below. Hostile forms have emerged near service entrances. The underground ring may now be occupied. European governments are preparing for a briefing that could mark the beginning of an effort not to rescue CERN, but to take it back. And beneath Geneva, the machine humanity built to study the smallest parts of reality may now be holding open the oldest door we ever feared. We are continuing our coverage of the emergency centered beneath the CERN facility near Geneva, where Swiss and French authorities are preparing a joint briefing after more than 5 hours of escalating reports from the underground ring, nearby access structures, and several cities across Europe. The language of the night has changed again. We began with equipment anomaly. We moved through thermal event containment failure, hostile biological hazards, and hostile emergence. Now sources close to the response are using a phrase that carries a military meaning even if no government has said it publicly yet. Occupied. The underground ring is occupied. That does not mean a flag has been raised. It does not mean a conventional force has entered and taken rooms. It means responders no longer believe the lower sectors are empty, damaged, or merely unsafe. They believe something is inside the structure, controlling movement through it, preventing access, and using the facility as a stable passage into our world. It has been just over 5 hours since the first abnormal readings at CERN. It has been less than 2 hours since authorities began warning civilians not to respond to voices from below ground. It has been less than 1 hour since the phrase continued hostile emergence appeared in an official notice. We are now approaching the moment when governments may have to say what everyone following this has already understood. This is not a rescue operation anymore.
The joint briefing is beginning. We're watching the feed now. It is not taking place at CERN. It is being held in a government facility with Swiss and French officials seated together, and there are military representatives visible behind them. That alone tells us the response has entered a new phase. Earlier statements came from scientists, local emergency services, health authorities, and civil protection offices. Now the people in the room are defense ministers, interior officials, senior military officers, and technical advisors who look like they have not slept since this began. The Swiss official is speaking first. He says the incident at CERN has created what he calls a persistent breach environment inside the lower accelerator complex. Persistent breach environment. That phrase is important because it means the opening is not closed, not fading on its own, and not limited to the initial collision event. He says the entities emerging from that environment are hostile, intelligent, and capable of deceptive vocalization. That is now official. Deceptive vocalization. The government is telling the public that the voices are deliberate. He is telling residents in all affected areas to remain above ground and to avoid underground structures until local authorities clear them. He is also saying that emergency services will no longer enter certain lower spaces in response to cries, voices, or visual reports, unless those reports are independently verified by command. That sentence is going to be devastating for families of missing people, because it means rescue has become conditional. It means the old moral rule of disaster response has broken. A voice is no longer enough. The French defense minister is speaking now. He says French and Swiss forces are establishing a unified exclusion zone around the CERN complex. The goal, he says, is to prevent further hostile emergence and prepare for structural denial of the breach system. Structural denial. That is the phrase we were waiting for.
Structural denial means they are preparing to make the facility unusable to whatever is inside it. The briefing continues. Officials are saying they are working with CERN engineers to identify critical tunnel junctions, power systems, cryogenic infrastructure, access shafts, and support cavities that may be destroyed or collapsed without creating a wider geological disaster. They are saying the objective is to isolate the active breach from the surrounding network and prevent it from propagating through connected lower spaces. That is the first official acknowledgement that the facility itself may be functioning as more than a location. It may be functioning as a distribution system. The question from reporters is immediate. Are they going to destroy the Large Hadron Collider? The Swiss official does not answer directly. He says every option necessary to protect human life is on the table. That means yes, if they can.
The briefing room reacted to that. You could feel it even through the feed. CERN is not just another facility. It is a symbol of human curiosity, cooperation, and scientific ambition. Thousands of people across decades built it to understand what the universe is made of. And now, in the middle of the night, military officials are discussing how to collapse parts of it because something from hell is using it as a doorway. The French official is being asked whether the entities are demonic. He avoids the word. He says, "We are not using theological language in operational briefings." But then he adds, "We respect that many witnesses are using religious terms to describe what they have encountered." That is as close as a government official has come to admitting that the public word and the operational word are describing the same thing. A journalist asks whether the Vatican is involved in the response. The answer is strange. He says religious authorities have been consulted regarding civilian behavior, mass gathering risk, and psychological stabilization. He does not say priests are being sent into CERN. He does not say exorcism. He does not say anything dramatic, but the fact that religious authorities are being consulted at all in a military scientific emergency tells you how far the event has moved beyond normal categories.
The briefing is now addressing missing personnel. Officials confirm there are CERN staff, firefighters, security personnel, and technical responders unaccounted for inside restricted underground sectors. They are not giving numbers. They say rescue remains a priority where conditions allow, but several sectors are inaccessible due to hostile activity and spatial instability. Spatial instability is another new phrase. It refers, according to the technical advisor now speaking, to internal routes that no longer correspond reliably to facility maps. He says camera feeds, distance sensors, and access control logs cannot be fully trusted in the lowest affected sectors. He says some internal doors appear to open into spaces not represented in CERN's structural plans. He says, and I want to be precise here, personnel should not assume a corridor leads to its mapped destination. That sentence may be one of the most frightening official sentences of the night. Personnel should not assume a corridor leads to its mapped destination.
That means the facility is not only occupied, it is being distorted. The technical advisor is trying very hard to keep this in engineering language. He is talking about sensor disagreement, signal contamination, topological inconsistency, and visual misregistration. But then a reporter asks whether the inside of the facility has become larger than the outside. He pauses for a long time before answering. He says, "We are not able to rule out non-local spatial effects in the active sectors." That is the scientific version of saying yes, maybe. The room has gone very quiet. This changes the assault problem completely. It is not simply a matter of sending troops into tunnels. The tunnels may not stay tunnels in the human sense. A team could walk 50 meters and end up somewhere that should not exist. A door could open into a chamber below no known level. A voice could call from a place that is not physically behind the wall but still be close enough to hear.
And yet someone may still have to go in. Officials are confirming that the main breach appears anchored near a lower interaction region associated with the earlier collision sequence. They are not naming the exact experimental sector, likely for security and operational reasons. CERN engineers believe several key systems must either be shut down, overloaded, flooded, or physically destroyed to destabilize the opening. Remote shutdown has failed in some sectors. Automated fire and flood controls are not responding reliably. Mechanical locks and access doors are behaving inconsistently. Some sensor systems report commands being accepted and then reversed. In plain language, the building is not obeying, or something inside it is using the building to refuse.
The briefing has ended. No questions about casualties were answered in detail. No full map was released. The officials left with the same exhausted expression we have seen all night. The expression of people who know their vocabulary is several hours behind the event. But the strategic picture is clearer now. CERN is the main gate. Hell, and we can use that word now because the public is using it and the facts have earned it, is not simply leaking through a hole. It has taken hold of the machine. The entities inside appear to be defending the lower sectors, disrupting communications, imitating human voices, and exploiting the underground layout. Governments are preparing to deny the breach structurally, which means destroying parts of CERN if necessary. This is no longer an accident. It is a battle for the doorway.
We are now 5.5 hours into the emergency. A short time ago, a facility built to study reality became an entrance to something outside human understanding. Now armed forces, engineers, firefighters, and surviving CERN staff are being asked to do something no emergency plan was written to imagine. They have to enter or collapse one of the most complex scientific facilities on Earth, while hostile entities control portions of its underground structure, and the geometry inside cannot be trusted. We are seeing first indications of the assault plan. It is not being called an assault publicly. Officials call it a structural denial operation. Military analysts are calling it a breach closure mission, but the core is the same. Retake enough of the surface and upper underground complex to reach the systems that can destroy or flood the lower ring. Prevent further emergence at access points. Keep civilians away from all underground structures. Use light, heat, barriers, and explosives to restrict movement of hostile forms. Coordinate with surviving personnel inside isolated control rooms if contact holds. That last part is critical. There may still be people alive inside the upper underground levels, and they may be the only ones who can guide the operation through systems that outside teams can no longer read.
We have a message from one of those isolated control rooms, relayed through an emergency coordination source. It is brief, and we cannot independently verify every word, but several outlets are now reporting similar content. The personnel inside say they can still see partial diagnostics for the ring. They believe the breach is pulsing in cycles. During each pulse, hostile emergence increases, communications distort, and routes inside the lower sectors shift more severely. Between pulses, some systems briefly stabilize. That gives the assault a rhythm. It also gives it a deadline. If teams are going to enter, plant charges, restore flood controls, or destroy key systems, they may have to move during the quieter intervals. But those intervals are shortening. According to the message, the first quiet interval lasted several minutes. The latest lasted less than one. The control room personnel used a phrase that is already being repeated by planners. The door is learning to stay open.
The door is learning to stay open. If accurate, that means time is not neutral. Waiting may make the breach stronger. We are receiving reports now that Swiss and French forces have begun clearing the outer perimeter of the CERN complex. Surface roads are being secured. Above-ground buildings are being searched and evacuated if they are not already empty. Military engineers are moving toward several access structures. Fire crews are staging with heavy foam and flood equipment. though no one is claiming foam can stop what is emerging. Portable lighting arrays are being positioned around service entrances. Drone footage is not being released publicly, but sources say several structures show heat distortion from below. There are also reports of hostile forms retreating from intense white light. That may be why light systems are being deployed so heavily. Earlier, a figure near an access road reportedly withdrew when floodlights hit it. If light does not destroy them but slows or repels them, it becomes part of the battle plan.
The first images from the outer perimeter are coming through official channels now. They are delayed, blurred in places, and carefully framed, but they show enough. Military vehicles near CERN access roads, fire apparatus positioned behind barriers, engineers in protective gear moving cables and equipment. Floodlights aimed not outward toward crowds, but downward into service openings. The light is harsh and white, almost surgical. Around one access structure, the ground looks scorched in a circular pattern, but the building itself is still standing. There is one frame that people will focus on. It shows a service doorway partly open with red light inside. A soldier is standing 10 meters away, rifle raised, but not firing. Behind him are two firefighters holding a hose line, and behind them, what looks like a priest in a dark coat speaking with an officer. The image is already everywhere. Authorities will probably say the priest is there for evacuees or responders, and that may be true. But symbolically, the image is impossible to control. Soldier, firefighter, priest, red doorway. That is the whole night in one photograph.
The photograph is powerful because it shows institutions meeting at the threshold. Force, rescue, faith, none sufficient alone. We are now receiving reports of the first significant hostile contact at an outer access point since the briefing. Swiss authorities confirm there was an engagement near a restricted service structure on the French side of the complex. Engagement is the word used. Several hostile forms emerged from a lower access corridor and were repelled by combined security and military units. There are injuries among responders. No civilian casualties are reported in that engagement. The description from sources is disturbing. The forms were not identical. One was described as large, low, and horned, moving with animal speed. Another was upright, thin, and burned-looking, with arms too long for the body. A third did not cross the threshold fully, but remained inside the red-lit passage, speaking in a child's voice in German and French. The units did not advance into the corridor after the engagement. They sealed the outer door and withdrew to the next barrier.
That variety matters. If these were animals, escape test subjects, hallucinations, or humans under some kind of exposure effect, you would expect more consistency. Instead, the accounts sound like different nightmares sharing the same exit. Some physical, some manipulative, some almost theatrical. And that may be part of the danger. They are not only attacking bodies, they are attacking recognition. A large horned thing is terrifying, but at least it is obviously hostile. A child's voice from a red hallway is worse in a different way. It tries to make the responder disobey training. It makes courage dangerous. It makes compassion a vulnerability. That is why the emergency alerts keep saying not to answer. It is not because officials have abandoned trapped people. It is because the entities are using the sound of trapped people as bait.
That distinction will be morally unbearable for responders, and it may become one of the defining traumas of this event. We are now 6 hours into the emergency. 6 hours ago, CERN was a functioning scientific facility. Now portions of its underground ring are hostile territory. European governments are preparing to destroy key parts of it. Residents are being evacuated from zones where the ground itself may call to them. Military units are engaging entities that officials still avoid calling demons. The Vatican is warning against contact with apparitions of the dead. Cities far from Geneva are closing underground systems as a precaution, and through all of this, the main breach remains open.
There is a new development from Lyon. Authorities there now confirm an incident in an underground metro maintenance area resulted in injuries to 2 transit workers and 1 police officer. They are not saying the injuries were caused by entities, but the station remains closed, and emergency crews are refusing to enter the service passage until a specialized team arrives. Witnesses outside the closed station reported hearing knocking from below the platform after the power was cut. This is the first confirmed injury event outside the immediate CERN region that may be connected to the breach pattern. Officials are still cautious. They do not want to imply hell is spreading through Europe unchecked. But whether this is physical spread, imitation, resonance, or panic, the effect is the same. Every underground system in Europe now has to be treated as a possible front. The Milan incident remains unresolved. Paris has expanded closures around several unauthorized underground areas. Berlin has ordered precautionary inspections of certain transit and utility corridors. London's Transport Authority says there is no evidence of local threat, but is increasing monitoring across deep-level stations. The contagion of fear has crossed borders even where the entities may not have.
That fear itself can create emergencies. Crowds at stations, people refusing to enter underground platforms, drivers blocking streets above closed tunnels, parents rushing to schools to retrieve children before routes pass through underpasses, hospitals seeing anxiety cases, emergency lines overwhelmed by reports of sounds from basements that may be pipes, neighbors, animals, or something else. Authorities are now fighting three things at once: the breach at CERN, possible secondary manifestations, and the human response to a world where down is no longer trusted. We have an update from the isolated control room inside CERN. Contact is intermittent but still alive. The personnel report that hostile forms are gathering near two lower access junctions that military engineers would likely need to use for structural denial. That suggests the entities understand, at least in some way, where humans would have to go to close the breach. Whether that understanding is tactical, instinctual, or something worse, we do not know, but it reinforces the idea that CERN is being defended from within. The control room also reports sound outside their sealed door. Not banging, not scratching, speech. They say the voices are using the names of their colleagues, including people who are missing and people known to be dead. The personnel have barricaded the door even though it is electronically sealed.
That control room has become one of the human anchors of the story. We don't know their names, we don't know how many are inside, but they are still sending information out while trapped inside a facility that is changing around them. They are helping plan the destruction of the machine they work to operate. That is a kind of courage I don't think we should rush past. Imagine spending your career maintaining one of humanity's great scientific instruments, then realizing the only way to save the world may be to help soldiers and engineers kill it from the inside, while something wearing your coworkers' voices stands outside the door.
Yes, we are getting word that the first attempt to remotely trigger flood controls in a lower sector has failed. The system accepted the command, then returned an impossible status message. The message reportedly read, "Occupied." That may be a corrupted system output. It may be a human-entered override from someone trapped inside. It may be an artifact of the software failing under extreme conditions, but the word is being taken very seriously. Occupied, again. The facility keeps returning the same idea.
The response is shifting faster now. Engineers are preparing manual alternatives. Military units are forming entry groups. Fire crews are being paired with soldiers. Technical personnel who know the facility are being asked to advise but not necessarily enter, though some may volunteer because they know the routes better than anyone. We should talk about those volunteers because there are reports that some CERN engineers are asking to go back in, not because they are reckless, but because they know which systems matter. They know where a manual valve is. They know which access shaft bypasses a damaged control point. They know what can be destroyed and what collapse might endanger nearby communities. Soldiers can fight toward a door. Engineers know which door matters. This is becoming a combined operation in the oldest sense. People with weapons, people with hoses, people with maps, people with prayers, people with keys.
And people with explosives. Military engineering units are now staging equipment believed to be for controlled demolition and tunnel collapse. Authorities have not confirmed details, but the structural denial language suggests charges may be placed at key junctions to break continuity around the breach. Flooding may be used in some sectors not because water is believed to kill the entities, but because it can block, weigh down, cool, short out, or physically isolate parts of the ring. There are also discussions, according to sources, of overloading magnetic systems or power infrastructure to destabilize the breach field, though that carries enormous risk. This is not simply blowing up a building, it is operating on a wound beneath two countries while the wound fights back.
And the people above ground are beginning to understand that something decisive is coming. Evacuation shelters are quieter now, according to reports. People are watching government feeds, church feeds, local news, anything that might tell them whether the assault has started. In Geneva, people outside the main evacuation zone are standing at windows facing away from CERN, because they have been told not to look toward certain access roads. That instruction may be practical. It may protect them from panic or from seeing things they cannot unsee, but people know what it means. Something is about to happen that governments do not want civilians watching directly.
We have a new official update. Swiss and French authorities say a joint operation will begin shortly to regain access to key technical sectors of the CERN complex and permanently disable the active breach pathway. The language is careful but clear enough. Regain access. Permanently disable. That is the assault. They are not using the word assault. They are not using the word hell. They are not saying demons. But the world understands. For the first time tonight, humanity is not only retreating, evacuating, and sealing doors. Humanity is going down.
It has been 6 hours since the first failure at CERN. The responders going in now know more than the first teams did. They know the voices are false unless proven otherwise. They know the corridors may lie. They know the things inside can move through smoke, walls, ceilings, maybe spaces that should not exist. They know the people missing inside may call to them and they may have to keep walking. There are moments in history where people are asked to enter fire, water, radiation, collapsed buildings, burning ships, battlefields. Tonight they are being asked to enter a doorway to hell with maps they cannot trust and orders to destroy the place that opened it. That is where we are.
We will continue. You are listening to Fictional Radio. I'm John Vale, with Mara Ellison in studio. We are 6 hours into the CERN emergency. The underground ring is believed to be occupied by hostile entities. The breach remains open. Secondary underground incidents are being investigated across Europe. Swiss and French forces, with engineers, firefighters, and surviving CERN personnel, are preparing to regain access to key sectors and disable the breach permanently. The world has spent the last 6 hours learning that hell is real. Now it is about to learn whether hell can be fought. We are continuing our coverage of the CERN emergency, now entering what officials are calling the Joint Breach Disabling Operation. The public phrase is technical. The reality underneath it is simpler and much worse. Swiss and French forces, supported by engineers, firefighters, medical teams, and surviving CERN personnel, are beginning an attempt to retake enough of the facility to destroy the pathway that has opened inside it. We are now a little over 6 hours into the emergency. 6 hours ago, the first abnormal readings were being handled as a technical problem. 5 hours ago, emergency crews were entering the service tunnels. 4 hours ago, residents near the facility were being told to stay away from underground spaces. 3 hours ago, governments acknowledged hostile forms. 2 hours ago, the word occupied began moving through sources close to the response. Now military units are forming entry teams around a scientific facility that has become, in every practical sense, enemy-held ground. The operation is not being shown live. Officials say that is for operational security and to protect the families of responders. There is a delay on all images released by authorities. Drone footage is being held. Local residents near the exclusion zone have been ordered away from windows facing the complex. We will not pretend we can see everything. What we have are official updates, delayed visuals, emergency service summaries, and reporting from European outlets with sources close to the command structure. The first objective appears to be the surface. CERN's above-ground buildings, access roads, security posts, technical yards, and emergency entrances must be secured before anyone can move into the lower sectors. In a normal facility emergency, that would be almost procedural. Tonight it is not. There are still reports of hostile forms emerging near service structures. There are sounds from sealed access points. There are red-lit openings where the emergency lighting should have gone dead hours ago, and there are missing personnel whose voices may or may not still be calling through internal systems.
The first images from the surface operation are coming in now. They are delayed, as you said, and heavily controlled, but enough is visible to understand the scene. The outer CERN campus does not look destroyed from above. That may surprise people. It is not a crater. It is not a field of fire. Some buildings still have exterior lights. Roads are intact. Emergency vehicles are parked in lines. Snow is visible in patches along the edges of roads and roofs. The horror is not that the surface is gone. The horror is that it looks almost normal, while red light keeps leaking from the doors underneath it. In one clip, a military engineering vehicle approaches a low-service structure with floodlights mounted above the entrance. The doors are shut. The ground in front of them is blackened, not burned exactly, more like stained or heat-scored. Soldiers move in a line along the left side of the structure while firefighters remain behind a barrier with hose lines ready. There is no monster visible in the clip. no dramatic attack. But the soldiers are aiming at a closed door, as if the door might open by itself. That posture says more than the official caption does. The caption calls it outer access stabilization. What it looks like is people preparing to shoot a building.
The military has now confirmed that 3 surface access points have been secured and 2 have been sealed from the outside. They are not specifying which ones. We are told one access point resisted sealing because of internal pressure from below. Internal pressure could mean heat, gas, air displacement, structural strain, or something physically pushing from the other side. The official summary says engineers withdrew and used remote equipment to apply a barrier. There are injuries reported among responders at one of the access points, but no fatalities confirmed in this stage of the operation. The injuries are described as acoustic trauma, disorientation, and burns. Acoustic trauma is new. A source says one team was hit by a sound from inside a partially open service passage that shattered face shields and caused several responders to collapse. We cannot confirm that description fully, but medical staging areas near the exclusion zone are preparing for both burn and neurological cases. That combination has repeated all night. Heat and the mind, fire and voices, bodies burned, people hearing names, systems failing, maps lying. The entities are not simply crossing a threshold. They seem to alter the conditions around the threshold.
There is a report from one of the outer teams that is going to be difficult for people to hear. A sealed service entrance began transmitting audio through a disconnected intercom. The building had lost power to that system earlier. Responders outside heard voices asking to be let out. They included the names of 2 missing CERN staff members. The command team checked against known personnel locations and could not verify that those people were behind that door. The team was ordered not to open it. Then, according to the report, the voices changed. They began naming the responders outside, not shouting, not screaming, just naming them calmly, one at a time, through a speaker that should not have been powered. The team withdrew and sealed the entrance remotely. That is the level of psychological attack being described tonight. It is not only grotesque shapes in red corridors. It is the use of names. It is the use of rescue. It is making a person doubt the order that keeps them alive.
We should pause on that. Names are not incidental. In almost every account we've received, the entities use recognition as a weapon. A name, a mother's voice, a child crying, a dead colleague's call sign, a familiar language where it should not be. This suggests intelligence, or at least a predatory mimicry, more sophisticated than simple sound reproduction. That may be why the entry teams are being instructed to reduce radio communication to code phrases and visual signals. We are seeing reports that some units are using written boards, colored lights, hand signals, and physical tethers inside certain access points. Not because the technology is unavailable, but because the enemy can speak. When the enemy can speak, silence becomes armor. We are now receiving the first formal outline of the breach disabling operation. It has several stages. Though officials are not giving all details, surface access must be secured. Surviving control room personnel must guide teams towards systems still responsive to human command. Engineers must reach manual flood and power isolation points. Military units must hold key junctions long enough for charges to be placed. Fire crews and technical teams will then attempt to flood or collapse lower sectors around the active breach. The phrase active breach is now official.
The control room personnel are still alive, at least as of the last update. They are trapped in an upper underground level, sealed off from the lower ring. They have partial access to internal diagnostics and are helping identify which corridors still match known plans. That phrase, still match known plans, is another thing that would have been unthinkable this morning. They are also warning command that the quiet intervals are shrinking. Earlier we reported that the breach pulses. During pulses, hostile emergence increases, communications distort, and the internal geometry becomes less stable. Between pulses, some systems become more reliable for short periods. The latest message from the control room says the quiet interval is now under 40 seconds in some lower sectors. 40 seconds. That may not be enough time to move a team through a junction, seal a door, plant a charge, or manually trigger a control. It means the assault teams may be entering a facility that is only briefly itself.
A facility briefly itself, that is a terrifying operational concept. We are hearing now that the first tunnel entry team has crossed into an upper service level. Officials call this a reconnaissance and access restoration team. It includes military personnel, a CERN technical advisor, and firefighters trained for confined space rescue. They are not attempting to reach the main breach yet. Their task is to secure a route to an intermediate control junction and determine whether manual systems can still be reached. The team is moving slowly. They are using floodlights, thermal cameras, physical guidelines, and intermittent radio checks. They are also carrying printed maps. Printed maps may seem archaic inside a high-tech facility, but tonight digital displays cannot be trusted. A paper map cannot update itself into a lie.
We have a delayed transcript of their first minutes inside. The language is clipped, procedural, very controlled. They report smoke or vapor in the corridor. They report heat at floor level and cold air above shoulder height, which makes no ordinary sense. They report markings on the walls that were not present in facility diagrams, not graffiti according to the transcript, scorching or cuts. They report a sound from below, rhythmic like metal being struck at a distance. Then one responder says the corridor seems longer than expected. Command tells them to stop and measure against their tether line. The tether line shows they have moved 30 meters. The map says the door they are approaching should be 18 meters from entry. The door is there anyway. That is the kind of mismatch they are dealing with. Not an endless fantasy hallway, not yet. Something smaller and worse because it is almost normal. A corridor that is 12 meters too long. A door in the right place and wrong place at the same time. Enough inconsistency to make every step a calculation.
The team has been ordered to mark every physical transition manually. Chalk, light markers, tether knots, anything that can be verified by touch. They are not to trust camera distance or internal signs. The CERN advisor reportedly identified one wall panel as belonging to a different sector of the facility, a sector that should be several kilometers away along the ring. That suggests the spatial distortion is not random. It may be folding pieces of the facility together, or presenting them together, or causing teams to encounter parts of the structure out of order. We do not have the language for this. The engineers do not either. They are describing it as non-local adjacency. The responders are using a simpler phrase, wrong turns. The building is full of wrong turns.
The team has reached the first intermediate junction. That is according to the latest official update. They encountered no visible hostile forms in the corridor, but they reported voices from behind 3 sealed doors. One voice used the name of the CERN advisor's wife. The advisor's wife is alive and not inside the facility. Command ordered the team to ignore the voice and continue. The transcript says the advisor acknowledged the order and remained with the team. I want to sit with that for a second. A person is walking through the underground facility they know better than almost anyone, helping destroy it, while something behind a sealed door uses the voice or name of someone he loves to try to stop him. That is not just horror. That is targeted pressure. The entities are testing the parts of human beings that operations manuals cannot fully protect.
The team is attempting to restore a manual relay that would give command partial control over 2 flood barriers and 1 emergency bulkhead. If they can restore that relay, later teams may be able to isolate a path toward the lower ring without leaving every door dependent on corrupted remote systems. We are now 6.5 hours into the emergency. The first stage of the counter-operation is underway. Surface access is partially secured. 1 tunnel team is inside. The control room personnel remain alive and are guiding the operation. Hostile entities continue to emerge at outer access points but appear to be slowed by intense white light and physical barriers. Secondary incidents in European cities remain under investigation, with Lyon now the most serious confirmed event outside the CERN region. Mara, we have a new update from Lyon.
Yes, French authorities now confirm the injured transit worker there described seeing a figure beyond a closed maintenance gate before the station was evacuated. The worker says the figure looked like a woman burned black from head to foot, standing ankle-deep in water that should not have been in the tunnel. She spoke with the voice of the worker's father, who died several years ago, and asked him to open the gate because she was cold. That sentence is spreading quickly because it combines so many of the patterns we've seen tonight. Burned form. Water where water should not be. Dead relative's voice. Request to open a barrier. The gate was not opened. The worker backed away and called control. Another worker approached and reportedly suffered burns on one arm after touching the gate. That worker is hospitalized. The station remains closed. Officials are now treating the Lion incident as potentially related to the CERN breach, though they still have not explained whether the connection is physical, atmospheric, psychological, or something else. This means the breach is no longer simply a local emergency with distant fear. There is at least one secondary manifestation causing injury in another city.
That will put enormous pressure on the operation at CERN. If the main breach is enabling secondary manifestations, then every hour it remains open increases the risk across Europe and possibly beyond. The strategy cannot be indefinite containment. It has to be closure. We are getting word now from the tunnel team. They have restored partial relay function at the intermediate junction. That is good news, and I want to identify good news when it appears. 2 flood barriers are now reporting physical status accurately. One emergency bulkhead has responded to a close command, though it is moving slowly. Command is testing it with the team clear of the mechanism. There is a sound on the team channel. We are not hearing it directly, but the transcript notes multiple voices overlapping during the bulkhead test. The voices reportedly repeated the word open in several languages. The bulkhead continued closing. That may be the first successful mechanical denial since the assault began.
Yes, and officials are treating it as significant. The bulkhead closure means some parts of the facility still obey physical commands when the right relay is restored. It means the building has not fully become the breach. There are still pieces of CERN that belong to the human side of the fight. That sounds almost symbolic, but operationally it matters. If they can create reliable barriers, even briefly, they can shape the route for the next team. They can prevent hostile forms from using certain corridors. They can force the breach response into a narrower area, and if they can narrow it, they can collapse it. The tunnel team is now being ordered to withdraw before the next pulse.
The team is withdrawing. We are waiting. They have reached the entry point. One member is injured, not life-threatening according to the first report. The CERN advisor is alive. The firefighters are accounted for. The relay restoration succeeded. That is the first clear tactical success of the operation. Small, but real.
And you can feel the tone shift in the official updates. Not relief exactly. No one is relieved, but there is a sense that the facility can still be acted upon. That matters because for the last 2 hours the story has been about systems failing, doors lying, voices deceiving, corridors changing. This is the first time humans went in, completed a limited objective, and came back. It also means the next objective will be more dangerous.
Yes, the next stage appears to be access to a lower junction closer to the main ring. That is where charges may need to be placed or flood systems manually armed. Officials are not giving a timeline, but sources say the quiet intervals are now so short that waiting much longer could make the attempt impossible. The control room personnel have sent a new message. It says hostile movement is increasing near the lower junctions. It also says the temperature profile around the suspected breach has become sharply divided. Extreme heat in lower cavities, deep cold in upper vents. That contradiction has been present all night, but it is intensifying. One engineer said in a message relayed to us, "It is like 2 environments are trying to occupy the same volume." That may be the most scientifically precise way anyone has described hell tonight.
There is also an update from the Vatican. The Pope is expected to make remarks soon. That is extraordinary at this hour. The statement from the Vatican press office says he will address the faithful and all people of goodwill regarding the events in Europe. That phrase, all people of goodwill, suggests the remarks will be broader than prayer. It may speak to fear, deception, and the calls from below. Religious leaders across Europe are already telling people not to seek out the voices, not to go underground to rescue loved ones without emergency guidance, and not to interpret every manifestation as a soul in need of help. That last point is painful. If something uses the voice of the dead, people will want to believe the dead are trapped. The entities may be relying on that.
We are now seeing reports of families trying to return to restricted areas because they believe missing loved ones have called them from underground. Police are intercepting some of them. In one case near Geneva, a woman reportedly tried to enter a closed basement after receiving a call from her son's number. Her son was confirmed safe at an evacuation shelter. The call had no audio except knocking and the sound of a child crying. Telecommunications providers are investigating spoofed or anomalous calls in the region. It may be panic, technical failure, malicious hoaxes, or something connected to the breach. But authorities are now telling residents not to trust calls from missing or deceased loved ones unless verified through official channels. That is another sentence that belongs to no previous emergency.
And it shows the entities may not be limited to physical emergence. The voices are moving through radios, intercoms, phone lines, maybe only by exploiting human systems, maybe by something stranger. The first battlefield is CERN, but the second battlefield is attention. Who gets people to listen? Who gets them to open a door? Who gets them to go down? That may be why John and I keep returning to language tonight. Not because words are more important than the physical attack, but because the attack itself uses words.
The breach speaks, and humanity is having to learn not to answer. We have a new operational update. The second entry stage is being prepared. This will involve a larger team, including military engineers, close protection units, firefighters, and at least 2 CERN technical specialists. Their objective is to reach a lower service junction known to connect to systems controlling flood valves and structural supports around the active sector. If they can arm those systems, later charges may collapse enough of the ring to sever the breach's stable geometry. That is the plan as we understand it. It is a plan full of assumptions that the route still exists, that the junction is reachable, that the flood valves remain connected to this version of the facility, that the team can return, that the entities cannot adapt faster than the humans can move.
The first team proved humans can still operate inside limited sectors. The second team has to prove they can push closer to hell and still come back with the door weakened. That is the next hour of this emergency, and we should say this plainly. Some of the people going in may not return.
The officials know that, the families know that, the responders know that. We will continue. For the first time tonight, humanity has pushed into the dark and returned. Now it has to go deeper. We are continuing our live coverage of the CERN emergency. We are now approaching 7 hours since the first reported anomaly inside the facility, and the situation has entered the most dangerous phase so far. Swiss and French authorities, working with military engineers, firefighters, CERN technical personnel, and emergency medical teams, have begun the second stage of what officials are calling the breach disabling operation. The first tunnel team went in and came back. That matters. They restored a relay, verified that some mechanical systems still respond to human control, and closed one emergency bulkhead despite hostile interference over the communications channel. It was a limited success, but in a night where almost every update has described loss of control, distortion, retreat, and evacuation, a limited success can become the first rung on a ladder. The second team is going lower. Their objective, as we understand it, is to reach a service junction closer to the active ring and manually arm flood systems and structural charges that may allow the lower accelerator sector to be isolated. This is not the final closure attempt yet. It is the step that makes the final closure possible. They need to reach the machinery that can break the doorway's stability. They need to do it inside a facility where voices cannot be trusted, maps cannot be trusted, some doors may not open into the spaces they should, and hostile forms are now believed to be actively defending the lower routes.
Officials are not showing the entry live, but we are receiving delayed operational summaries. The second team entered through a secured access point approximately 15 minutes ago. It is larger than the first team and more heavily protected. There are military personnel assigned to close defense, engineers carrying charges and manual tools, firefighters with breathing equipment and thermal protection, and 2 CERN technical specialists who know the layout of the lower junctions. They are moving with physical tether lines, printed maps, portable floodlights, and chemical light markers that they are placing at every turn. The team is also operating under a strict voice discipline protocol. That is the phrase being used. Voice discipline. They are not to answer unidentified voices. They are not to repeat names spoken by unknown sources. They are not to open doors in response to distress calls. They are not to break formation if they hear a child, a coworker, a spouse, a parent, or their own name. That sounds almost unbearable, but it is now part of the survival procedure. One source says each team member had to write the names of their immediate family on a card before entry, and those cards were sealed away with command. The reason is simple and terrible. If a voice inside the tunnel uses a loved one's name, the team member cannot treat that as proof of anything. The enemy has used names before.
This is one of the strangest battlefields in modern history because the enemy does not only attack through force, it attacks through recognition. The rules being developed tonight feel almost medieval and almost futuristic at the same time. Authentication phrases, physical tethers, thermal shielding, flood systems, demolition charges, priests advising families not to trust apparitions, engineers trying to collapse non-local geometry, soldiers instructed to ignore the voice of their own mother if it comes from behind a sealed door. We have an update from the team's first 10 minutes inside. They reached the previous relay junction without direct contact. That is the location restored by the first team. The emergency bulkhead remains closed and responsive. That is good. The corridor beyond, however, appears to have changed. The physical distance to the next marked point is longer than the facility maps indicate by nearly 20 meters. That mismatch is larger than before. The team is marking distance manually and continuing only because the CERN specialists believe the route remains functionally connected to the correct junction. Functionally connected is the phrase they are using now.
The difference matters. It means the route may no longer make sense geometrically, but it still may lead to the target. Imagine being told the hallway is wrong, but it is wrong in a way that still might get you where you need to go. That is what these responders are walking into. They are now reporting temperature inversion again. Heat at floor level, cold above. That has been a recurring sign of the breach environment. Their boots are registering dangerous surface temperatures while ice is forming on parts of overhead piping. One firefighter reported hearing water running behind a wall, but the facility map shows no water line there. Another reported shadows moving across a door before any light source changed. Command has ordered the team to keep moving and not investigate side spaces. That may be the hardest kind of courage. Not fighting everything you see, not opening every door, not rescuing every voice, moving forward because the objective is bigger than the immediate horror.
We are also following events outside CERN. Secondary underground precautions are expanding across Europe. Lyon's affected metro station remains closed after injuries and reports of a burned figure behind a maintenance gate. Milan has suspended service in a wider section of its underground network. Paris has increased security around closed catacomb-adjacent passages and old quarry access points. London, Berlin, Madrid, and Vienna are not reporting confirmed hostile activity, but transit authorities are increasing monitoring and closing some non-public underground access overnight. The spread may be physical, it may be resonant, it may be fear, it may be all three, but governments are no longer treating it as a rumor. They are treating underground spaces as potential vulnerabilities until proven otherwise. The Vatican has issued another advisory, coordinated with local dioceses, asking clergy not to enter restricted zones independently and not to conduct rites near underground access points without emergency authorization. That may sound bureaucratic for a religious statement, but tonight even faith is being folded into incident command.
The Pope has begun speaking now. The remarks are brief, and we will summarize them as they come through. He is praying for the people of Geneva, for responders, for the missing, and for those facing fear across Europe. He is not using dramatic end times language. He is not saying the world is ending, but he is saying evil sometimes speaks in the voice of need, and that people must not mistake deception for a call to mercy. That is clearly aimed at the voices. He says those who hear the dead calling from below should not follow, because the dead do not ask the living to enter darkness. That line is going to travel very far tonight. He is now asking governments to protect life and scientists to serve truth with humility. He says courage will be needed not only from soldiers but from those who refuse to listen when darkness uses the sound of love. The statement has ended.
We have a new operational update from the second entry team. They have reached the first lower junction. There has been contact. The official summary is short. A hostile form emerged from a lateral passage during the approach to the junction. The team used floodlight saturation and weapons fire. One firefighter was injured. The form retreated or was forced back into the passage. The team did not pursue. They sealed the lateral door manually and continued toward the flood control station. We are waiting for more detail.
A source close to the operation is providing additional description, and I want to warn listeners that this is disturbing. The form reportedly appeared low to the ground at first, moving like a person crawling too quickly, but then rose on limbs that did not align like human arms or legs. Its body was burned black or covered in black ash, with exposed areas glowing red underneath. The team's lights caused it to recoil, but not immediately. It repeated the same sentence several times in different voices. The sentence was, "You left us down here." That is targeted. That is designed to make responders think of the missing personnel. The injured firefighter was burned through the outer sleeve when the form struck or brushed against him. He remained with the team briefly, then was escorted back by 2 members under order from command. The rest of the team continued. That decision will be hard for people to hear. They did not abort the mission after the injury. They sent the wounded back and kept going.
That tells us the mission is now considered time critical. If the objective were optional or exploratory, contact and injury would likely end the entry. Instead, the team continued toward the flood control station. That means command believes the window for closure is narrowing. We are now 7 hours into the emergency. The second entry team is inside the lower service levels. They have encountered hostile forms. One responder is injured. The team continues toward manual systems needed to isolate the breach. We are receiving an update from the isolated CERN control room. The personnel inside are reporting increased movement outside their sealed area. They say the voices have stopped using names and are now repeating operational phrases from the assault: flood control, junction, charges, withdraw. It appears the entities may be echoing human mission language, either through intercepted communications or through some other means. Command is reportedly changing terminology mid-operation to prevent the voices from confusing teams. This is another layer of adaptation. The breach, or the entities within it, are not static. They are listening.
The control room also reports that the main ring sensors are showing more coherent activity, which sounds good until you hear what they mean. Earlier, the readings were chaotic: heat, cold, pressure mismatch, motion in evacuated sectors. Now several sensors appear to be stabilizing around repeating pulses. The control room personnel describe it as rhythm. The breach is not calming down, it is organizing. One of the technicians reportedly sent a message saying, "It's not failing anymore, it's running." That may be the most frightening technical update yet. CERN was built to run controlled cycles: magnets, beams, timing, synchronization, precision. Now the fear is that whatever came through is learning to use the structure's stability, not merely damage it. The machine is becoming a kind of frame for the portal.
If the breach is becoming stable, the assault cannot wait. We are getting another update from the second team. They have reached the flood control station. The station door is closed but not sealed. The access panel is physically intact. Remote command cannot operate it, but the CERN specialists believe it can be opened manually. The team is preparing to enter. There are voices inside the room. Command has ordered them not to answer. The team is opening the door. We are waiting for confirmation.
John, we have a partial update. The room is not empty. The team is reporting 3 figures inside the flood control station. At least one appears to be wearing CERN work clothing. Command is ordering visual verification before engagement. The team is being told not to approach. This is exactly the nightmare scenario. They may be looking at missing personnel, hostile entities imitating missing personnel, or something between those categories. The team is asking for names. Command has told them not to accept verbal identification. They are requesting physical verification markers, badges, injury patterns, prearranged survivor signals. One figure is standing still. Another is facing the wall. The third is reportedly crying. The CERN specialist with the team says one of the figures resembles an engineer who was confirmed missing earlier. Command is ordering the team to hold position.
This is where operational language becomes inadequate. If there are real survivors in that room, every second matters. If those figures are entities, hesitation may kill the team. If the entities can wear the appearance of the missing, then rescue and attack become almost impossible to separate. We have a new update. The figure facing the wall has turned around. The team is withdrawing from the doorway. Shots fired. The official channel reports shots fired inside the flood control station. The team is using floodlights. Command is ordering them to hold the corridor and not enter until the room is cleared. We are waiting.
A source says one of the figures moved wrong. That is the phrase, moved wrong. It crossed the room too quickly, against the light, and struck one of the soldiers. The crying figure began laughing in multiple voices. The team opened fire. Floodlights were pushed into the room. At least one hostile form retreated through a service hatch that does not appear on the local map. The soldier is injured but alive. The team is still at the doorway. They have not entered fully. The possible CERN worker is still inside, down on the floor, not moving. Command does not know whether that person is alive.
The team has to decide whether to enter, and the mission objective is inside that room. This is the kind of decision that no one listening at home should pretend is simple. If they do not enter, the flood control station remains unavailable and the breach may continue stabilizing. If they enter, they may be stepping into a trap built out of the faces of the missing. We have confirmation. The team is entering.
They are entering with lights first. 2 soldiers, 1 firefighter, 1 engineer. Others hold the corridor. They are using a tether line through the doorway. The CERN specialist remains outside the threshold, guiding them toward the manual valve assembly. The downed figure in CERN clothing is being checked from a distance. No movement, no confirmation of life. The team reports the room is larger than expected. That again, larger than expected. They are inside a flood control station that should have fixed dimensions, and the room appears larger than expected. Command is ordering them to focus on the controls and not explore the room.
They are at the manual valve assembly. The engineer reports heavy resistance. The system appears partially locked by pressure or mechanical deformation. They are using tools. There are sounds from the service hatch. The team is working. The voices have started again.
The voices are saying the names of the people in the room. They are also repeating the Pope's line from minutes ago. The dead do not ask the living to enter darkness. But they are saying it mockingly according to the transcript note. Multiple voices, overlapping, laughing through it. That means the entities or whatever force is speaking through them are now echoing public broadcasts or emergency channels. They are listening beyond the facility or receiving what comes through human systems. That is deeply unsettling. It means no phrase stays safe for long.
The manual valve is moving. Command reports partial flood system arming. 1 valve open. 2nd valve resisting. The engineer is continuing. The team is under pressure from the service hatch. Lights are being directed into it. There is a hostile form visible in the hatch. The team is holding. The 2nd valve is moving. The 2nd valve is open. Flood control station armed. The team is withdrawing.
They are withdrawing with the injured soldier. The possible CERN worker remains in the room. Command ordered no recovery because the room is unstable and hostile contact is active. That is going to hurt. If that person was real, if they were alive even seconds earlier, the team had to leave them. We should not soften that. The team is moving back through the corridor. The service hatch is still active behind them. The flood control station is armed but not triggered yet. It will need to be coordinated with charges and bulkhead closure. This was a tactical success, but it came at a moral cost.
The 2nd team is returning to the intermediate junction. There is a new problem. The corridor they used to enter appears changed. The markers are still present, but one set of chemical lights now appears on the wrong side of a sealed door. The tether line remains intact, and Command is ordering the team to follow the tether, not the visual markers. Follow the tether, not the room. That is where we are.
The team is moving along the tether. They are reporting voices from both sides now. One voice is giving correct command instructions. Another is giving false ones. Command has switched to a silent signal protocol. The team is counting knots on the tether line and moving physically, not by radio guidance. The injured soldier is slowing them down. The firefighter who was burned earlier has reached the upper medical point. He is alive. The 2nd injured responder is still inside with the team. They are nearing the 1st junction.
We are waiting. They have reached the relay junction. The emergency bulkhead is open. It should be closed. Command is asking who opened it. No one knows.
That means the route behind them may not be sealed anymore. The 1st team's successful closure has been undone, or bypassed, or the team is not seeing the same bulkhead. The entities may have regained part of the route. The team is being ordered to move faster. There is hostile movement behind them.
They are moving now. The team is accelerating toward the entry point. Floodlights behind them. Weapons ready. The tether is still intact. The injured soldier is being carried. There is a sound on the command channel described as thousands of voices, not loud enough to drown command, but present underneath it. The transcript says the voices are repeating one phrase, "Leave the door."
The team is almost out. They are out. The 2nd team has exited the lower service access. 2 injured, all original team members accounted for. The flood control station has been armed. The mission objective was achieved, but the route behind them is no longer secure.
That is a major tactical success and a major warning. The team reached the flood control station, encountered hostile forms, armed the system, and returned with all personnel. But the breach environment adapted during their withdrawal, and at least one previously closed barrier is no longer reliable. The next stage will have to move quickly. We are now 7.5 hours into the emergency. The main breach remains open. The flood control system is partially armed. Engineers are preparing demolition stages. Hostile entities continue to defend the lower sectors. Secondary incidents are spreading fear across European underground systems. The assault has proven that humans can reach the machinery. It has also proven the entities can interfere with the path back.
This is the point where the operation becomes irreversible. Once they trigger flooding, charges, collapse, or magnetic overload, there may be no way to preserve the facility. CERN, as the world knew it, is probably already gone. The question is whether its destruction can be controlled enough to close the breach without tearing open something worse. There is a new message from the isolated control room. They say the pulses are nearly continuous now. They say the door is almost stable. And they say if the final collapse is not attempted soon, the breach may no longer depend on the machine.
That is the deadline. If the breach stops depending on CERN, destroying CERN may no longer close it. We will continue. You are listening to Fictional Radio. I'm John Vale, with Mara Ellison. We are 7.5 hours into the CERN emergency. The second entry team has returned after arming the flood control system. The lower route is no longer secure. The breach is stabilizing. Engineers and military units are preparing the next stage, which may destroy the lower ring and the facility built around it. Humanity has reached the controls. Now it has to break the machine before hell learns to stand open without it. We are continuing our live coverage of the CERN emergency, now 7.5 hours after the first anomaly inside the Large Hadron Collider complex. The second entry team has returned from the lower service levels. The flood control system has been manually armed. Demolition teams are preparing charges at key structural points. The isolated CERN control room is still in contact, though barely. Their last message warned that the breach pulses are becoming nearly continuous, and that, if the final collapse is not attempted soon, the opening may no longer depend on the machine. That is the sentence every command decision now revolves around. If the breach still needs CERN, CERN can be destroyed. If the breach no longer needs CERN, then humanity loses the only doorway it knows how to close. The operation is accelerating. Officials are no longer speaking in the language of preservation. Earlier, there were references to protecting infrastructure, preventing spread, stabilizing the breach environment. That language has changed. Swiss and French authorities now refer to terminal structural denial of the active ring sector. Terminal is the important word. It means no one expects the lower complex to be recoverable after this. The Large Hadron Collider, as a scientific instrument, is being sacrificed.
And there is a feeling tonight, even from the controlled official feeds, that everyone understands the size of that sacrifice. CERN was built across borders, across decades, by thousands of people from around the world. It was one of the great symbols of human cooperation, a machine designed to ask reality what it was made of. Now the people who know it best are helping military engineers decide where to break it. We are receiving reports that some CERN personnel evacuated earlier are being asked to advise remotely from secure locations. They are identifying tunnel junctions, cable galleries, emergency shafts, cryogenic lines, and structural points that may allow the ring to be collapsed inward rather than outward. The goal is not simply to blow up the facility. The goal is to sever the active sector from the rest of the underground network, flood the lower ring, collapse the geometry around the breach, and prevent whatever is inside from using the machine as a stable frame. That is a very human response in a way. Humans do not understand hell, so they are attacking the architecture.
The final operation appears to have 3 moving pieces. Engineers will trigger the flood control system that the second team armed. Demolition units will collapse selected tunnel junctions and access routes. A separate team, guided by the isolated control room, will attempt to overload or shut down the systems believed to be stabilizing the breach. Officials have not confirmed the exact sequence, and they likely will not until it is over, but sources describe a narrow window in which flooding, collapse, and system disruption must happen close together. Too early, and the entities may retreat through alternate routes. Too late, and the breach may stabilize beyond the machine. It is difficult to overstate the risk. Flooding underground spaces can trap survivors. Collapse can redirect pressure and damage communities above. Explosives near high-energy scientific infrastructure carry unknown hazards even under normal conditions. None of this is normal. The facility interior is distorted. Hostile forms are moving through lower sectors. Some barriers have stopped obeying. The voices are now repeating operational terms. The enemy, if that word can be used, is listening. We have a new update from the control room.
The control room says hostile movement is concentrating near what they call the central access throat. That appears to be one of the routes needed for the final systems team. They also report that several cameras in the active sector are showing the same image from different angles, a red-lit chamber that does not correspond to any known CERN space. In the center of the image is a dark vertical opening, not a hole in the floor exactly, more like a standing wound in the air. The people in the control room describe movement inside it, but not through it yet. They say the chamber appears larger each time the feed returns. One of their messages is only 4 words: "It is holding shape." That suggests the breach is becoming less like an event and more like a place.
If the breach becomes a place, then the machine may no longer be required to sustain it. The final systems team is entering now. We are not being given names. We know it includes military personnel, combat engineers, at least one CERN technical specialist, and a firefighter unit assigned to force movement through sealed or burning sections. Their task is not to reach the breach itself. Their task is to reach the control path that can trigger the overload and lock the collapse sequence into place. The official update says they have entered through an upper secured access point and are moving toward the central systems junction. The route was cleared earlier but is no longer considered reliable. Tethers are being used, lights are being used, radio is restricted. The team is moving under silent protocol for stretches, with command receiving only timed confirmation pulses. Confirmation pulses. A knock from humanity back through the dark.
The surface perimeter is also under attack now. Swiss authorities confirm multiple hostile forms have emerged near at least 2 sealed access structures during the final operation. That timing is probably not coincidence. It looks like the entities understand pressure, maybe not strategically in the human sense, but enough to respond when the closure begins. The delayed footage shows floodlights across the CERN campus, snow and smoke moving sideways in the wind, soldiers firing toward a service entrance, and firefighters using high-pressure streams to push something back from a doorway. The image is blurred at the center, but you can see enough movement to understand why. There is a large form at the edge of the entrance, low and horned, its body black against red light. It does not behave like an animal panicking under fire. It pulls back, then comes forward again when the lights shift, almost testing the response. Another access point shows something worse. A line of human figures standing just inside a doorway. They are not advancing. They are standing still while voices come through the emergency channel claiming to be missing staff. Command is ordering units not to approach. The figures remain just beyond the reach of the floodlights. This is defense by temptation.
Defense by temptation. That phrase may define the entities more accurately than any biological term. They do not only break through barriers, they make the barrier feel immoral. We have an update from the final systems team. They have reached the first control junction. The route was longer than expected, but the tether remained consistent. The CERN specialist confirms they are in a recognizable section of the facility. That is good. They are attempting to isolate the power path to the active sector. There is resistance in the system. The command returns are inconsistent. The panel is accepting manual input, but displaying text that does not belong to the interface. The first line reportedly says, "Not yours." The second says, "Built for us." That may be data corruption. It may be hostile interference through the facility control system. It may be someone inside using the interface, though command considers that unlikely. The team is proceeding manually.
The flood sequence is being prepared on the surface side. Fire crews and engineers have moved behind reinforced barriers. The flood control system armed by the second team is reporting partial readiness. One valve is confirmed open. Another is reading open but visually unconfirmed. A third emergency channel is blocked by pressure. Engineers are worried that if flooding begins before the demolition charges are ready, the water may force contaminated material or hostile forms through unintended routes. That means the timing has to be exact. The final systems team must isolate power and destabilize the active sector. Demolition teams must place and arm charges. Flooding must begin as the collapse sequence starts, not too early and not too late. And all of this must happen while the breach pulses are almost continuous. There are still missing people inside. No one has said that part for several minutes, but it remains true.
Yes, there are still missing people inside. The operation is being conducted under the assumption that some personnel may still be alive in isolated pockets, but officials have admitted that the lower active sectors cannot be searched before closure. That is a terrible sentence. It means the decision has been made that the living world must be protected, even if it means sealing the missing inside with whatever has taken the ring. The families will carry that forever. The responders will carry it too. We have another message from the isolated control room. They say the voices outside their door have stopped. For the first time in hours, there is silence outside. The people inside believe that is not good news. They believe the entities have moved toward the final systems team and demolition routes. The control room is now transmitting its last available internal map packet. After that, they are preparing to cut their own connection if the voices begin using the channel.
That is extraordinary. The control room personnel are choosing to blind themselves from command if their line becomes compromised. They may be the only remaining human eyes inside parts of the facility, and they are ready to shut that down because the entities have shown they can use communication as a doorway. We have a partial message from them. It says, "If we go quiet, finish it."
The final systems team has reached the second junction. There has been contact. We are waiting for more. The official summary says hostile forms entered the junction from an unmapped side passage. The team used lights and weapons fire. One engineer is injured. The CERN specialist is still moving. The team is continuing because the isolation point is less than 30 meters ahead, though measured distance may not be reliable. A source says the unmapped side passage opened in a wall that was solid when the team approached. That may be misperception in smoke, but it is consistent with earlier reports of wrong geometry. The team has been ordered not to engage beyond clearing a path.
The surface attacks are intensifying. Authorities confirm one outer access barrier has been breached and then resealed. There are casualties among military personnel. No numbers yet. The entities appear to be probing multiple exits at once, forcing defenders to split attention. This may be instinct. It may be coordination. It may be that the breach environment itself is reacting to being closed, pushing everything outward. Secondary reports are coming in from Lyon and Milan again. The Lyon station where injuries occurred is now reporting renewed knocking from beneath the sealed platform. Police have cleared several blocks. In Milan, transit authorities are hearing voices in an evacuated tunnel even after power was cut. Paris is closing additional underground access as a precaution. If the CERN closure fails, this may become a continental emergency beyond containment.
The final systems team has reached the isolation point. They are working manually. The panel is physically damaged. The CERN specialist is attempting a bypass. Command is receiving intermittent confirmation pulses. The team reports cold air coming from a floor grate and heat from the wall. Voices are present but not using names now. They are speaking in what a source describes as layered languages, some recognizable, some not. The CERN specialist has begun the bypass. There is a new warning from the control room. The breach pulse has become continuous. The quiet intervals are gone.
That means they are inside during full activity. No pauses, no stable windows. Whatever protection the timing gave them earlier is gone. The control room says the breach is holding shape and expanding toward the lower junctions. They are recommending immediate execution once isolation is confirmed, even if the demolition teams are not fully clear. That recommendation is being reviewed by command. We do not know whether that means teams may be trapped by the sequence. This is the moment every plan fears, when the timeline collapses and command has to choose between people inside and the world outside.
The bypass is complete. Isolation path confirmed. The final systems team has succeeded in isolating the active sector's stabilization path. Demolition teams are being ordered to arm. Flood teams are standing by. The control room has sent one word: now.
The charges are being armed. We are seeing delayed footage from surface teams pulling back from access structures. Fire crews are behind barriers. Military units are holding positions at sealed doors. The light around the complex has changed. It is redder now, even on cameras balanced for emergency lighting. Smoke or vapor is rising from several vents. The final systems team is withdrawing. They have an injured engineer. The CERN specialist is with them. They are moving along the tether. Command is telling them they have less than 3 minutes before the sequence has to begin.
3 minutes. We are 8 hours into the emergency. The final systems team is withdrawing. Demolition charges are armed. Flood systems are ready. The active sector is isolated. The breach is continuous. Hostile forms are pressing at outer exits. Secondary underground sites across Europe are reporting renewed activity. This is the closure attempt.
The team has reached the second junction. Hostile movement behind them. The tether is intact. They are carrying the injured engineer. Voices on the channel are now repeating command's countdown out of sync, trying to confuse timing. Command has switched to visual signal confirmation through the tether system. The team is not responding by voice. They are moving. 2 minutes.
Demolition teams report green on primary charges. Secondary charges partially armed. Flood control system reports 2 channels ready, 1 uncertain. Command is proceeding with available systems. The surface perimeter is under attack again. Gunfire reported near an access point. Floodlights are holding. Fire teams are pulling back. The final systems team is approaching the first junction.
1 member down. We do not know who. The team has stopped. Command is ordering them to continue. They are trying to lift the fallen member. 1 minute and 20 seconds. The CERN specialist is reportedly arguing with Command, asking for more time. Command says no.
The fallen member is moving again. They are being dragged or carried. The team is moving. 1 minute. The control room has gone silent.
The control room has cut transmission or lost contact. No signal from them now. The final systems team is near the exit corridor. The voices on the command channel are saying, "Open the ring."
30 seconds. Flood teams are preparing to trigger. Demolition command is locked. The final team is not out yet.
They are at the upper access. They are almost out. 15 seconds.
Command is asking for confirmation. No voice response. Tether signal confirms movement. 10 seconds.
They are out. The final systems team is out. 1 member critical. All members accounted for.
Flood sequence initiated. Demolition sequence initiated. We are waiting.
There is shaking visible on the surface cameras. Heavy shaking. Floodlights are moving. The image is unstable. Red light from multiple vents. Smoke rising. Fire crews are behind vehicles. Soldiers are on the ground or bracing against barriers. The first charges have detonated.
The first charges have detonated. We are seeing confirmation from the official feed. Structural collapse has begun in selected lower sectors. Flooding is underway. The second charge sequence is beginning. We have lost the official surface feed.
All feeds from the immediate CERN perimeter appear to be down. We still have distant cameras from outside the exclusion zone. There is a glow over the facility, red-white pulsing. The ground is shaking enough that cameras several kilometers away are trembling. There is a sound on one feed. It is low, continuous, almost like a horn or a roar, but it may be the microphone distorting from vibration. The glow has brightened.
We are receiving seismic reports from the region. A significant localized seismic event has been detected beneath the CERN complex. Authorities had warned that controlled collapse could produce tremors. We do not yet know if this is within expected parameters. The second charge sequence should have completed. We have no direct confirmation.
The distant glow just dropped. It did not fade. It dropped like someone closed a furnace door underground. There is smoke. No red light visible on that feed now.
We are waiting for official confirmation. No contact from the isolated control room. No direct surface feed. No current status from the lower ring. Secondary reports from Lyon say the knocking in the metro station has stopped.
Milan reports the voices in the evacuated tunnel have stopped. Paris police say underground sensor anomalies are decreasing, but they are not reopening anything yet.
That may be the first sign the closure worked. We are waiting for confirmation from CERN. We have a Swiss government update. It is very brief. The primary collapse sequence has completed. Flooding is ongoing. Hostile emergence at the main site has decreased significantly. The active breach is believed to be destabilized. Believed to be destabilized, not closed.
That is not enough. Not yet.
No, not yet. We are now getting another update. Rescue and assessment teams are not entering the lower facility. The site remains too unstable. Surface teams are re-establishing perimeter control. Medical evacuation is underway for injured responders. There is still no contact with the isolated control room. The main ring may have collapsed, but we do not yet know whether the door is closed.
The world is waiting for a word no government can give too early. Closed.
We are 8 hours into the CERN emergency. The final systems team reached the isolation point and returned. Flooding and demolition were triggered. The lower sectors have collapsed in part or in full. Secondary activity across Europe appears to be dropping. The red light over CERN has diminished. The official statement says the active breach is believed to be destabilized. We are going to continue through the aftermath. You are listening to Fictional Radio. I'm John Vale, with Mara Ellison in studio. Humanity has struck the machine. Now we wait to learn if hell struck back. We are continuing our coverage from the studio. We are now more than 8 hours into the CERN emergency, and for the first time since this began, the pace of the reports is slowing, not because the situation is over, not because the danger has passed completely, but because the main violence of the night, the opening, the spread, the containment failures, the tunnel entries, the final demolition sequence, has reached a kind of terrible pause. Swiss and French officials now say the primary collapse sequence beneath CERN has completed. Flooding is ongoing in selected lower sectors. Surface teams have re-established control around several access points. Hostile emergence at the main site has dropped significantly. Secondary reports from Lyon, Milan, and Paris have also diminished, though all underground closures remain in effect. That is the careful version. The simpler version is this: the assault may have worked.
It is still too early for relief. Officials are choosing every word carefully. They are saying destabilized, suppressed, reduced, contained. They are not saying gone. They are not saying safe. They are not saying hell is closed. And after everything that happened tonight, no responsible person would say those words too soon. But the change is real. In Lyon, the knocking under the sealed metro platform has stopped. In Milan, emergency crews say the voices in the maintenance tunnel faded shortly after the CERN collapse sequence. In Paris, underground sensors that were showing unexplained heat spikes have begun returning toward normal. Geneva hospitals are still receiving injured responders and evacuees, but there are fewer new calls from the immediate perimeter. The red light that had been visible over parts of the CERN complex is no longer visible on distant cameras. For hours, every update made the world feel as if it was opening downward. Now, for the first time, something appears to be closing.
We have a new statement from the Swiss Federal Council. I will summarize it plainly. The statement says the main breach pathway inside the CERN underground complex has been severed by a coordinated structural collapse, flood operation, and system isolation sequence. It says the facility has suffered catastrophic damage and will remain under military quarantine. It says assessment crews will not enter the lower ring until geological, thermal, and hostile activity risks are reduced. It says the public should continue to avoid all restricted underground spaces and follow local authority instructions. Then, near the end, there is the sentence people have been waiting for. The statement says the primary breach is no longer active. The primary breach is no longer active. That is not victory in the clean way people want victory. It is not a parade. It is not a clean sky after a storm. It is a sentence written by exhausted officials after soldiers, engineers, firefighters, and scientists destroyed one of humanity's greatest machines to close a doorway that should never have existed. But it is the sentence.
And there are people alive because of it. We are now getting confirmation that the final systems team made it out before the collapse sequence. Several members are injured, at least one critically, but all members of that team are accounted for. The second team, the one that armed the flood controls, is also accounted for. The first tunnel team survived. Surface units took casualties during the final attacks at the access points, and there are fatalities among responders, though numbers are not yet being released. The isolated control room is different. There is still no contact. Officials are not saying everyone inside is dead. They are saying communication has not been restored and access is impossible. But the control room's last known message was, if we go quiet, finish it. Then they went quiet before the final sequence. We do not know what happened in that room. We may not know for a long time, but we know this much. They helped guide the teams to the controls. They warned command when the breach became continuous. They sent the last map packet. They told the outside world to finish it if they went silent. The outside world did.
There will be names later. There will be lists. There will be official ceremonies and investigations and memorials, and some of them will feel inadequate because language will keep failing around this event. How does a government citation describe holding a control room while hell speaks through the walls? How does a scientific institution memorialize the people who helped destroy the machine they built because it had become a door? How does a family grieve someone whose last known act was not escape but instruction? Those questions will come. Tonight, the living are still counting.
There are already gatherings in Geneva, though authorities are asking people not to crowd near restricted areas. Some people are standing outside churches. Some are outside evacuation shelters. Some are simply in streets, wrapped in blankets, looking toward the part of the sky above CERN, where the red glow used to be. Church bells are ringing again in several towns. This time, people know who is ringing them. That matters. Earlier tonight, bells rang in ways people could not explain. Now communities are ringing them deliberately, not in celebration exactly, but in defiance. There is a difference between a sound rising from below and a sound chosen above ground. I think people need that difference right now.
Yes, the European Commission has announced that all major underground transport systems across the continent will remain under emergency inspection through the day. This does not mean there is active danger in every city. It means authorities are not yet ready to trust the underground world. Metro systems, deep utility corridors, mines, road tunnels, old bunkers, and certain public shelters will be inspected, monitored, or closed depending on location. In many cities, morning commuters are being told to use surface routes if possible. It will be chaotic. It will also be understood. No one wants to be the first person to walk down an empty stairwell after this night.
The Vatican's latest statement says the Church is grateful for the courage of responders and urges people not to seek out sealed places or attempt private rituals near restricted entrances. That warning is important because the crisis may be moving into a dangerous emotional phase. When the main event quiets down, people begin looking for personal proof. They return to basements, they check sealed doors, they try to hear the voice again. They convince themselves that if the voice used someone they loved, maybe there is still a chance. Officials and religious leaders are now aligned on this point. Do not go looking. If there are voices, report them. If there is knocking, report it. If there is red light, heat, smoke, strange odors, or movement from underground spaces, leave and contact authorities. Do not investigate. Do not open the door because it sounds like someone you miss. That may be one of the hardest instructions human beings have ever been given.
We are getting our first clearer picture of the damage at CERN. Surface structures remain standing in many areas, but the lower complex is believed to be catastrophically compromised. Several tunnel sections have collapsed. Flooding continues through the lower ring and adjacent service areas. Cryogenic and power systems have been disabled or destroyed. Access shafts are sealed with concrete, steel barriers, and military guard posts. The site will not be repaired in any ordinary sense. CERN as it existed yesterday is gone. That is another loss, and it should be named. Even after everything that happened, even after the breach, even after the entities, even after the voices and the fire and the red doors, there is grief in losing the place. Not grief for the machine over human life, but grief because the machine represented something human beings did at our best. Thousands of people from different nations built a ring beneath the earth to ask peaceful questions about creation. Then something answered from beneath the question. That does not make the question evil. It makes the answer terrifying.
That is important. There will be anger. There already is anger. People are blaming scientists, governments, arrogance, curiosity, technology, Europe, CERN, physics itself. Some of that anger is understandable. Some of it will become dangerous. There will be people who say humanity should never have looked so deeply. Others will say the experiment did not create hell, only found a door that was already there. Investigations will argue over causes for years, but tonight, the same people accused of opening it helped close it. CERN engineers went back to maps that had stopped making sense. CERN personnel trapped inside sent guidance until they went silent. Technical specialists entered with soldiers and firefighters because only they knew which valves mattered. The facility became the wound, but the people who knew the wound helped cauterize it. That complexity should not be erased.
We are now approaching 9 hours since the first anomaly. The sky over Geneva is beginning to lighten. It is winter dark still in many places, but dawn is coming. Distant cameras show the area around CERN covered in smoke, emergency lights, snow, and flood lamps. The red glow is gone. In its place are white lights, blue lights, headlights, the gray beginnings of morning. The first aircraft restrictions remain, though emergency and military flights continue. Hospitals are still under surge protocols. Evacuation shelters remain active. The exclusion zone is not being lifted. People will not return home near the facility for some time. Some may never return to the same home in the same way. We have a statement from French authorities now. The secondary incident in Lyon is considered inactive, though the station remains sealed. No further voices or knocking have been reported in the last 30 minutes. The injured transit workers are alive. Milan reports the affected tunnel segment is quiet. Paris reports no confirmed hostile emergence, but inspections continue. Across Europe, Underground closures remain cautious rather than reactive. That suggests the main gate at CERN was indeed the anchor.
And if CERN was the anchor, destroying it mattered. That gives shape to the sacrifice. The assault was not symbolic. It was not only revenge against the facility. It broke the structure that allowed the breach to remain stable. Whatever else is still out there, whatever entities may have emerged before the collapse, whatever sealed tunnels still have sounds behind them, the mass opening has been stopped. Humanity did not understand hell, but it found the hinge and broke it.
We have a new emergency bulletin from Swiss authorities. They are asking all residents in previously affected zones to remain above ground until cleared by inspection teams. They are specifically warning against entering basements or underground garages to retrieve personal items, even if the area appears calm. They say some hostile remnants may remain in sealed lower spaces near the original breach network. That phrase, hostile remnants, is new. It tells us the closure of the primary breach does not mean every entity has vanished. This is the scar the world will live with after the wound is closed. There may be things left behind.
There are reports from a village outside the main evacuation area where residents heard knocking from a storm drain after the primary breach was declared inactive. Police responded, sealed the street, and found no visible form. The knocking stopped when floodlights were aimed into the drain. That is unconfirmed, but it matches the warning about remnants. We should be careful not to undo the resolution of the night. The main gate is closed. The mass emergence has dropped. Secondary incidents are quieting. The assault worked. But a door closing does not mean nothing crossed before it closed. Some things may still be here. That is not the same as losing. It is the cost of winning too late to keep the world untouched.
The United Nations Security Council is expected to meet in emergency session within hours. Scientific oversight bodies will begin investigations. Religious institutions are preparing public services. Military quarantines around CERN may remain indefinitely. There will be debates about whether any high-energy physics facility should ever operate again, though scientists are already cautioning that fear should not outrun evidence. There will be conspiracy theories, false videos, hoaxes, forged messages from the dead, fake maps, and people trying to enter sealed places for attention or belief. Emergency officials are pleading with the public not to do that. Those instructions are not dramatic. They are the thin, practical line between survival and another call no one can safely answer.
John, we are getting a final update on the control room. Not contact, not rescue, but confirmation from officials that the control room's last map packet was received intact and used in the final sequence. They are saying, carefully, that the personnel inside made a decisive contribution to the closure of the primary breach. That is memorial language. They are not saying deceased, but you can hear the shape of what they expect. There is also a detail from the last packet. Along with the structural data, the packet included a short text note. Officials have not released the full note, but a source says it ended with, "Do not reopen for us." Yes, because someone inside understood what their own voices might become. Do not reopen for us. That sentence should be carried into every rescue plan, every sealed door, every investigation, every memorial. It is the final act of people who knew the enemy could use compassion as an entry point. They denied it that entry, even through their own possible deaths. The first sunlight is reaching parts of Geneva now. The images are gray and cold. Smoke is rising from the CERN complex. Not red smoke, not supernatural light, just smoke, steam, dust, and the exhausted machinery of emergency response. Snow around the roads is stained dark in places. Vehicles are parked in long lines. Medical tents are still active. Soldiers are standing at sealed entrances. Firefighters are sitting on curbs with helmets off, staring at nothing. A church bell is ringing in the distance on one of the live feeds. Slow, human, deliberate. No one on that feed is speaking.
We are nearing the end of this continuous broadcast, though the story itself will not end here. The main breach at CERN has been declared inactive. The facility is destroyed as a functioning collider. The lower ring is collapsed and flooded. Hostile activity has fallen sharply across reported secondary sites. European underground systems remain under inspection. CERN and the surrounding region are under military quarantine. Missing personnel remain unaccounted for. Some hostile remnants may remain in sealed lower spaces. Humanity made the decision to destroy the door, and, by every indication we have now, the door closed. Not cleanly, not completely, not without loss, but it closed.
The world after this will be different. Not because hell conquered it, it did not. Not because science ended, it cannot. Not because faith explained everything, it did not either. The world will be different because everyone now knows there is a below deeper than geology, deeper than tunnels, deeper than history. And everyone now knows that if a door opens there, it can be fought, but the cost will be almost beyond language. The people who went into CERN tonight did not defeat hell forever. They stopped it from entering all at once. That may be the most honest version of victory.
We began tonight with a science note, a routine experiment, a power fluctuation, a tunnel fire. We end with a destroyed ring beneath Geneva, a sealed military quarantine, cities across Europe inspecting the spaces under their feet, and families waiting for names that may take days to release. We also end with a fact that matters. When the door opened, humanity ran at first. Then it held the surface. Then it went down. It went down with rifles, hoses, maps, charges, prayers, valves, tethers, and the names of loved ones sealed away so the dark could not use them. It went down knowing the voices might be lies and the corridors might not return. It went down and broke the hinge. That does not make the morning bright, but it makes the morning possible.
And for now, that is enough.
You have been listening to Fictional Radio. I'm John Vale with Mara Ellison. It has been nearly 9 hours since the first anomaly at CERN. The primary breach is inactive. The collider ring is gone. Emergency crews remain on scene. Europe remains under underground safety restrictions. Officials are asking people to stay above ground until cleared. If you are in an affected area, do not enter sealed lower spaces. Do not investigate knocking, voices, or heat from below. Report it and move away. The sun is coming up over Geneva, and beneath it, under concrete, water, steel, and collapsed stone, the door is closed. For now, good night.